Welcome, everyone. Tonight, we are the March 25th, 2021 Pleasanton Unified School District Board of Trustees meeting. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, sorry, we were running just a little bit late tonight. As has been our practice since the pandemic, we are here actually in the boardroom, but viewing public is watching us on TV 28 or TV30.org. And so we're being live streamed. There was an opportunity to complete public comment cards. And when you are submitting those cards, you'll be put in a waiting room. You should continue to watch the stream on another method because you won't be able to do it there. And they'll call you when it's time for the item. So we are going to do a couple of introductions. Sorry about that. Tonight, to my right, I have Dr. David Haglund, who is the Superintendent of Schools. I'm Joan Larson. I'm serving as the President this year. Next to me on my left is Mark Miller, who is serving as the Vice President of the Board, Trustee Steve Maher, Trustee Kelly Mukashi, Trustee Mary Jo Carrion. And with us off the dais tonight, we have Dr. Janelle Woodward, the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Mr. Ed Dialazzo, Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services, Mr. Julio Hernandez, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. Tonight we do not have Mr. Ahmad Sheikh al-Islami. He's online. So, there you are. Thank you. He's joining us via Zoom, who is our Assistant Superintendent Business Services, and Mr. Patrick Gannon, who is our Coordinator of Communication and Community Engagement. So there's that. Gosh, I am a little bit discombobulated tonight. We ran a little bit late and it flustered me. We also have our student board member tonight, Rachel Zhang from Amador Valley High School, so we look forward to hearing her report. I do have a couple of things to report out of closed session. The first is on item 2.3. On closed session item 2.3.1, the board voted 5-0, moved by Trustee Carrion and seconded by Trustee Mukashi, to approve a compromise and release agreement for internal case number SED 120.20.21 for the amount not to exceed $100,000. On a happier note, we also have the pleasure of reporting that the board voted unanimously to accept the appointment of Maggie Tung as coordinator of fiscal. And is Maggie here with us tonight?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to work with Pleasanton Unified School District. Thank you.
Welcome. We're really happy to have you. And that was all I have to report out of closed session. All right. Tonight we have a fairly short agenda. Is there anything to change on the agenda? Otherwise, I'll seek a motion to approve.
I'll move approval of the agenda.
Sorry, not all those in favor. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Mukashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Larson, aye. And item 6, we'll move on to recognitions and introductions.
Thank
Dr.
you,
Haglund.
President Larson. Tonight, we're proud to recognize the continued legacy of our high school competitive civics teams. Last month, both Foothill and Amador Valley High School's teams made it to this year's California State We the People competition. Sponsored by the Center for Civic Engagement, We the People involves thousands of hours of preparation to take part in mock congressional hearings that test the students' knowledge of the Constitution. If you've ever had the opportunity to sit in on a session, you will have had the chance to hear some of our country's future leaders speak to very important and complex issues. Amador Valley coach Stacy Scalar, Foothill coaches Graham McBride and Jerry Dedamore, along with a team of incredible parents and PUSD alumni volunteers, dedicate countless hours supporting these young people. We're thrilled to congratulate and welcome Foothill's competitive civics team, led tonight by Graham McBride, who will be heading to the National We the People Finals for their 4th consecutive year at the end of April. Mr. McBride, would you like to say a few words and introduce your team?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Hagland. It's very kind words. You know, it is kind of amazing for a program that relies so much on public speaking, and my students are absolutely experts in doing so. I always get nervous appearing before the PUSD board. It's the big stage, and so I am thrilled to be here tonight to introduce our team that we are incredibly proud of. Myself, my colleague Jeremy Dedamore, and the entire We the People community that's helped support us here. I know it looks a little bit different, I'm guessing, from the webinar side, but I'm looking at a regular Zoom window, and so I'm wondering if my students can turn on their video for a moment so they can be seen. I'm going to read their names very, very quickly here, just because I believe they need to be recognized for their wonderful work. They are absolutely phenomenal team that not only has made this program flourish during this very strange year, but have very nobly carried the tradition of We the People forward. I am certain, even though I say their names every day, I'm probably going to mess one up. So I'm going to read off the list, just because I get nervous, but I'll do my best here. I would like to recognize Rohan Abraham, Lexi Barrera, Justin Choi, Smriti Devi, Sean Duan, Sanjana Dukapati, Barrett Fahey, Robert Gann, Helen Han, Nick Jang, Suba Khan, Aubrey Kim, Ted Kim, Ananya Kutikad, Ali Lamb, Luke Ritchie, Jocelyn Tao, Mary Thurlow, Charlotte Zander, and Emily Zhang. They are an absolutely phenomenal team, and I am thrilled to have the opportunity to represent, to watch them. I'm just sitting in the background to watch them represent Pleasanton at the national stage. It's truly an honor. Thank you so much, members of the board and Dr. Hagland. And a big old jazz hands from our team, please. Jazz hands. Thank you so much.
Well done, everybody.
And I believe there is a upcoming dress rehearsal. Is that going to be streamed so that the public can join?
I believe you're referring to the scrimmage that we're hosting with Fremont's Irvington team,
Yes.
which we will be doing in advance of the actual competition. I honestly do not know. It's put together by some volunteers that work with our program, but I can certainly ask and get that information out. Because obviously it would be a wonderful opportunity to have the public join us even virtually.
I think they'd like that.
So yeah, Graham, if you would send that information to me, I'd be happy to make sure it gets out to everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hagland.
And congratulations, you guys are phenomenal. You do a great job, and your teachers have continued on with a wonderful program that all of Pleasanton is very, very proud of. So good job. All right, item 7, we'll hear from our employee associations. And first up, we have Derek Pizarros from California School Employees Association. I hope. All right, well, while we figure that out, we will see if the president of the Association of Pleasanton Teachers is available, Michelle Verkeilen.
I am here.
Welcome.
Good evening, President Larson, members of the board, Dr. Hagland, members of the cabinet, and our community. I am Michelle Verkeilen, president of the Association of Pleasanton Teachers. Congratulations to our We the People students and their guiding staff. Pleasanton students and staff deserve safe and healthy schools, and we need John Q. Public to help out. It is fantastic that our number of vaccinated people continues to increase and our number of cases continues to go down. It is a sure sign that we are moving in the right direction. But in order to ensure we continue in that right direction, we need to continue to take the basic precautions of masking up and socially distancing. We want our educators and students to be able to remain on campus, and in order to do that, we need to continue to maintain 6-foot distancing. Please, when you are on our campuses watching or participating in events, When you are out and about in the community, continue to exercise precaution. We want to close the school year out strong and be able to start the new school year in full mode. We are depending on everyone to make that happen. Thank you in advance from all your children's teachers, counselors, nurses, social workers, and our full array of specialists. And speaking of our specialists, we want everyone to know that we stand in solidarity with all of our APT members. Every single one of our members plays a critical role in supporting our students academically, socially, and emotionally. It is important that all our members are treated with respect and that they have access to equitable working conditions and benefits. Recently, our non-classroom members have not been receiving the same respect for their positions or access to the same working conditions. Who are our non-classroom members, you ask? They are our counselors, our social workers, our school psychologists, our speech and language pathologists, our vision specialists, our deaf and hard of hearing specialists, our reading specialists, our resource specialists, our certificated librarians, our behaviorists, our clinicians, our therapists, our speech and language pathologists, our nurses, our induction coaches who support our beginning teachers, our elementary science, physical education, and music specialists, our adapted PE specialists, our program specialists, our intervention specialists, and our integration specialists. As you can tell, these educators play a large role in the educational success of our PUSD students. We have petitions I will share, signed by hundreds of our members that show that we stand together and ask for equitable conditions for all. Please support us in making that happen by advocating for the fair and equitable treatment of our non-classroom members, because all of our positions are vital in supporting all of Pleasanton Unified students. We stand together as a union. Please stand together with us, because Pleasanton students deserve the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And now Derek Pizarros from the California School Employees Association is with us, I believe.
Good evening. Thank you, Trustee Larson. And good evening to the remaining Board of Trustees, Dr. Haglund, Pleasanton leadership, staff, and the community. CSEA would like to recognize and thank the continued support of our APT co-workers, management, students, and their families. We understand that some of our members may be speaking on their own behalf tonight, and that they may have additional support from the members of the groups mentioned above. We encourage all of our members to do so, but tonight we stand behind those that wish to speak to you and the community, and that's all we have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Now it's time on our agenda for public comment for items that are not on our agenda. The board, due to the Brown Act, cannot discuss with members of our community items that are not on the agenda, although certain times clarification can be requested from the superintendent. Are there any public comment for items not on the agenda tonight, Mr. Gannon?
Yes, we have a number of public comments this evening. And we will start off with Suzanne Kostelnik, followed by Grace Chen, and then Nadia Raymond.
Just a reminder, you will have 2 minutes, and then I'll ask you to wrap up if you haven't completed your comments.
Hi, yes, this is Suzanne Kostelnik. I'm speaking tonight as a follow-up to 2 emails I sent, both our trustees and our superintendent this past week, regarding the most recent update to both cohort and physical distancing guidance offered by the CDC and adopted by the California Department of Public Health, the Alameda County Department of Public Health, and the Alameda County Office of Education. According to updated physical distancing guidance, maintaining a minimum of 3 feet between student chairs is strongly recommended. Additionally, cohort guidance is now updated to only apply to counties in the purple tier. As you know, our current case rate in Alameda is 3.3%, and our positivity rate is 1.4%. We are headed into the orange tier as early as next week. Our original reopening plan indicated that schools may reopen fully for in-person instruction when we entered the orange tier. I realize that we are near the end of the school year and that our schedule at the secondary level has been set and will likely remain the same for the remainder of the year in order to minimize disruption to our students and staff. However, this does not prevent us from returning current hybrid in-person students for more days within the current schedule. I'm asking that you consider dissolving the current cohort grouping at the secondary level in response to the updated guidance and allow students to attend in person 4 days a week. Many schools around California are now considering the same action for their students, as it is our moral and legal obligation to provide in-person learning to our students to the greatest extent possible. This was the original intent of the distance learning waiver put into place last year. Our secondary students who are in person on campus now are eligible now to attend school in person every day. The CDC states that it is okay. The California Department of Public Health states that it is okay. The Alameda County Department of Public Health and Alameda County Office of Education state that it is okay. Further, the current MOU with APT says to follow county and state guidelines. The decision to allow our secondary students more time on campus is entirely in the hands of our superintendent and our trustees. Returning all secondary students to campus for 4 half days a week will reduce the number of learner groups teachers must juggle, make the in-person learning experience more satisfying with more students together in a classroom at one time, and demonstrate to our community that we are committed to providing these opportunities when conditions allow for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll have Grace Chen, followed by Nadia Rahman, and then Christine Chen.
Hello, my name is Grace Chen, and I'm a senior at Amador Valley High School. I currently serve as a student representative on Amador's School Site Council. I'm a member of Amador's We the People team and a member of Amador's Grassroots Law Project. I'd like to thank Trustee Joe Carrion, Trustee McCaughey, and Dr. Haglund for meeting with our club in the past few weeks to discuss SROs and their role in our district. Throughout this year, our club has spoken to many representatives, whether it be Amador admin, city council, Mayor Brown, and the biggest thing we've learned is that school resource officers should be the last resort in student intervention. We've also heard about the memorandum of understanding that is currently being drafted to help solidify a definition for the role of an SRO. I personally think that this is a great step forward for PUSD because it allows for clear communication between the district and PPD. This past January, our club hosted a public forum with members from our community, which included both parents and students. During our discussion, we heard multiple concerns about how often the SRO is used as the first resource for discipline, and especially in more serious crises like mental health interventions. Therefore, tonight I bring a proposal to the board regarding the memorandum. The public should be able to have input on the MOU so that their concerns are addressed, or the MOU should be reviewed by the public before it is finalized. This way, students, parents, teachers, and more have a say in a resource that we come in close contact with every day on our campuses. Additionally, I'd like to thank the board, the district, teachers, and administrators for the transition to in-person learning in the past few weeks. As a senior in hybrid at Amador, I found that being on campus has helped me as a student, and I hope for a safe and healthy journey to the end of the year. Thank you.
All right, next we have Nadia Rahman, then Christine Chen, followed by Renli Tian.
Hello, school board members. My name is Nadia Rahman. I'm a 17-year-old senior at Amador Valley High School. I'm also part of Grassroots Law Project like Grace, and I want to thank everyone who had on the school board who has met with our club and Dr. Haglund for meeting with us this Wednesday. I wanted to also make a point on SROs, and I wanted to point out that a lot of city council members and school board members have communicated to us that SROs have not been used for what they were intended to. They have been used for disciplinary purposes, which both the school and it seems the police department do not agree with. I wanted to propose to the school board to create a task force to investigate the effects of SROs on campuses and what role they should be playing and what role they are currently playing. Thank you for your time.
All right, next we have Christine Chen, followed by Renli Jian, and then Rochelle Dean.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Dear Board, District Leadership, and Pleasanton Community, in light of the latest update on the 3 feet distancing guidance by CDC and CDPH, I'd like to urge you to explore the possibility of increasing in-person instruction hours for the rest of the school year. First, per the new state guidelines dated March 22nd, small cohorts or stable groups are no longer necessary unless the county is in purple tier. As a result, over the last several days, multiple school districts in the state, near and far, have taken immediate actions to return hybrid students to full-time in-person schedule as early as next Monday or after spring break. Just name a few: Lafayette, Marin, Mountain View, Chino Valley, Ventura USC, etc. Just this afternoon, our neighboring San Ramon USD is voting on the plan to have hybrid kids back for 4 full days a week starting next Monday, including both primary and secondary students. We would like to understand PUSD's plan to ensure that we are aligned with this newest change. Second, by now, all grade level students have been back in person. Can this district provide a detailed read on number of in-person students for both Group A and B by schools? We have heard that in middle schools and high schools, many classes only have less than 10 in-person students for either Group A or B. In my daughter's case, who is in Amador High, in one class, she is the only in-person student for Group B, so that she has to go to the library to Zoom in for that class. Can we look at the data on Group A and B and find out ways to reconfigure classrooms to offer more in-person instruction hours for the rest of the year? This will potentially benefit the planning and the full opening for fall as well. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, next we have Renli Tian, and then finally Rochelle Dean.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Hagland, and community. My name is Wen Li, and I'm from an Asian cultural background. Since last week, it has been extremely difficult time for myself, my family, and so many Asian Americans. The lives lost in Atlanta was devastating, sadly. Many more anti-Asian hate crimes were reported in New York, in Washington, D.C., in Seattle, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, and in San Jose. I'm angry and I'm deeply pained. And honestly, I have to worry about my own safety when I go out to the supermarket or the park or any other public places. I really fear for my family, my friends, and our children who are from an Asian background. This is a real fear that myself and so many in the Asian American community feel. During this hard time, I'm very thankful to the warm support from Pleasanton community. Last week, we received very warm emails from our superintendent, Dr. Hagland, and some of our trustees condemning their discrimination and violence. Last weekend, my neighbors visited my family with their flowers from their own yard, telling us that they are as sad as we are, and that they are with us together. Thank you, our trustees, superintendent, neighbors, and community for your voices and your support means a lot to the Asian community at the tough time. We really appreciate. As Dr. Hagland always said, by standing together, we can do more and do better on this issue. I hope specific plans and strategies can be developed to create an inclusive environment in schools. I hope our district and schools take actions to make sure our students with an Asian background feel safe. I suggest that books and films, especially documentaries about Asian Americans, can be introduced to all students in all school levels.
Thank you, Ms.
I believe that we greatly contribute to respect and understanding throughout our community. Thank you for the time.
All right, and finally we have Rochelle Dean.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Okay, great. My name is Rochelle Dean. First of all, I want to thank all the Pleasanton board members and a big shout out to one of my favorites, Mr. Maher. I've been a parent advocate for 20 years. I myself have a older son who went through the system. I have 6 kids who went through the Pleasanton Unified. So I dedicate my time to help other parents who have children who are on 504s and IEPs get the services that they're entitled to. Unfortunately, they are being denied. I'm now raising my 2 nieces, one who has an IEP and with learning disabilities. I was denied services twice for because of they say that she already has services, but she needs desperate aid. When I work with her, she gets it. When she's by herself, she doesn't get it. She needs a redirection. I represent a lot of clients, and these students are falling even further behind, especially being out of education, school for 1 year. My question is, what is the district going to do for these kids with the learning disabilities who are on 504s and IEPs who are getting further and further behind and not getting their programs? This really concerns me, especially with my niece that I work with a lot. I have a lot of clients that say, what can I do? And so I thought I'd come on and voice my concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rochelle. Again, that's the end. All right, thank you everyone for those public comments. Now we will move on to our student board members report. Rachel Zhang from Amador Valley High School.
Good evening, President Larson, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Haglund. Thank you for having me here tonight to report for Amador Valley High School. I'll start with our transition to the hybrid learning model over the past 2 weeks. Our students are predictably very excited to be back on campus and meet their teachers in person for the first time, as well as see their friends. And our teachers have done a commendable job balancing both hybrid and remote learning. It's a lot to simultaneously manage and to ensure that all the students feel included. But if we've taken anything away from the past year, it's that our teachers persevere and will refashion their classrooms to prioritize student needs. We have not run into any difficulties enforcing our health precautions on campus, and students have been very respectful of maintaining social distancing and wearing a mask at all times. There definitely has been one very noticeable difference in the classroom in our fairly short time with hybrid. But even just with a few students in the classroom, we've been able to see our teachers return to their element. There was always a bit of stiffness with the inherently detached format of virtual learning, but the mere presence of students in the classroom has helped teachers relax and be more personable, which of course serves to the benefit of both hybrid and remote students. And in my last board report, I spoke about our hopes to administer an SAT test on campus to provide for students. We're beginning to begin preparations to offer a school day administration of the SAT to juniors who are interested in using this exam as an alternate entry for the National Merit Scholarship qualifying test or for college admissions. And as always, the test administration is tentative and pending local health conditions and staffing, but as of now, it is set for Tuesday, April 13th at AVHS, and it's for AVHS juniors only. And in other news, we held our annual Tedx event on campus last Wednesday. This year it was a live stream, so all members of our community were able to watch our students deliver speeches that they had worked tirelessly on over the course of the year. And because it was a live stream, we were also able to open up the event to Foothill. So we were able to bring in high schoolers and unify them and broaden the reach of the program. And Mrs. Condi and our senior parents committee have been working really hard to distribute our senior lawn signs to honor our students who are graduating from the district this year. And we have some important upcoming events this spring. Our Dawnversity Week will take place from April 19th to the 23rd, and the week will feature a virtual rally, club fair, and performances from our eclectic groups on campus. Also, the Every 15 Minutes Committee is working diligently to produce a short film, which is going to showcase the dangers of drunk driving, which will be shown to our students during an access period. And our Speech and Debate Club has had some great results over the past few weeks. We had 2 students, Kirti Nalabatu and Gaurav Padshar, qualify for the state championships, and Gaurav also qualified for the national championships this year. So the tournaments will be virtual in April and June, and we wish our students the best of luck. Lastly, with some athletics updates, we recently held our first football scrimmage, and our first game is this week. Our red tier sports have begun their seasons, which includes football, baseball, softball, lacrosse, and soccer. And our band is competing in an inter-schools virtual competition with Color Guard. That competition will continue through March, so we wish our band students the best of luck. And overall, we've really enjoyed welcoming back our students in the classroom and on the field, and we look forward to continuing to support our hybrid and remote learners over these last 2 months of the school year. Thank you.
That was a phenomenal report. As always, you know, hearing your student voice, you know, on the ground reporting, you know, and actually your compassion, Rachel, for your, not just how the students are feeling, but also how the teachers are feeling was really touching. So thank you very much for that report. Are there any questions for Rachel from trustees? Thank you so much. That was great. Oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Carry on.
I thought they were having like a Broadway presentation this week.
Friday night.
Yes, that is this Friday night, correct.
Yeah, that's amazing that they can do that virtual. I'm just very impressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, twice now I've had the, I don't know if it's an honor or the, I don't know, it can't be an honor. I'm sorry, Rachel, but following the Zhang girls, whether it's Rachel or Nicole, it's crazy. They're so brilliant, and it just makes me feel so underwhelmed with myself. That's probably a good thing. That's probably a good thing. All right. So it is truly a blessing to see more and more students on campus and engaged in those things that bring out the very best in them. This is also true for the members of the team, myself included. I've had many teary-eyed conversations with teachers and school staff who are just so grateful to be reconnecting with kids and with one another. Rachel mentioned the Tedx event. I was fortunate to have been able to watch them record that session in the multipurpose room there at Amador Valley High School. Just so impressed by the high school students who spoke and those who performed. They're such amazing talent and thoughtful individuals. So thank you all for continuing to put on that pretty special event that includes students from both Amador Valley and from Foothill. As teachers and students begin to settle back into the classroom, our athletes are returning to competitions, and our cheerleaders and bands are now allowed to join them on the sidelines. Updated guidance now provides for indoor instruction for band, orchestra, drama, and choir programs as soon as we're in the orange tier, which we believe will occur next Wednesday. So I want to thank the trustees, school administrators, teachers, parents, and students who joined us in pushing at the county and state leadership to ensure that students have the opportunity to participate in these activities that so often are the anchors that hold them to their school site. So thank you for everybody for collaborating and helping us get that done. But you know what, we're not done yet. We've got a lot of advocacy work that we need to engage in. More is needed, and we'll need your continued support as we work to expand access to in-person learning in the coming weeks and to set the stage for the full return of our award-winning academic and co-curricular programs in the fall. We're committed to getting this right and to taking careful and measured actions with the best interest of our students and staff at heart. We, like many of you, are pleased with the state's adoption of the CDC's new guidance around physical distancing in classroom. We see this as a significant step towards welcoming all students back to the classroom full-time. While that is great news, it's not all that needs to be done by the state. Later this evening, we will outline district and board advocacy for consistent guidance on conditions necessary for us to welcome all students back, especially in the middle and the high school levels. We ask for your ongoing patience and collaboration in this work, as it will continue to take all of us working together to make it happen. I appreciate the work being accomplished by our negotiating teams. This is an important part of the process for a public school district, and we have consistently found ways to move forward together with our labor partners. We need to keep at that work. It's important work. We have been pleased with the deployment of the COVID vaccination within the community and across the county. Our thanks to our partners at Alameda County Office of Education and the Alameda County Public Health Department for their help in coordinating the response. Also, special thank you to Mr. Ed Dialazzo, Mr. Mike Williams, and Mrs. Kelly French for their efforts to secure additional vaccines through Walgreens and Safeway that have been deployed to PUSD staff during weekend clinics here at the district office. I am pleased to report, as reported in the news earlier this afternoon, that the Alameda County Public Health Department reports the state will expand access to vaccines to folks over the age of 50 on April 1st, and then to all residents 16 years of age and over starting on April 15th. And the real positive news from Dr. Moss in the call this afternoon was that the supply of vaccines is still very strong. So there's hope that that's not just not just words about that opportunity. So I want to encourage everyone to be sure and register on California's My Turn website, as well as with your healthcare provider if you've not already done so. Get in line and get in every single line that you can find, so when it's your turn, you get a call. As we shift to the orange tier, additional relaxation to the guidelines will occur. I encourage our families to be thoughtful how you embrace new opportunities. It is vital that we continue to practice the safety measures that have helped us get to this point. Wear a mask, wash your hands, and maintain physical distance when you're in public spaces. Thank you for your support as we move forward together for our students. I would like to conclude my report tonight by observing a moment of silence in honor of the late Dublin board trustee, Catherine Coe, who was tragically killed yesterday. Please take a moment with me to reflect in appreciation of her service to her community. Thank you. There is nothing more precious than life. Our hearts and prayers are with our neighbors in Dublin, and most importantly, with Catherine's family and friends. That's my report for tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Hagelin. I'm glad you mentioned Catherine. Our hearts are pretty heavy about this tragic loss for our neighbors over in Dublin. And being that our communities are so closely linked, we have friends and family and connections all throughout the Tri-Valley. And when something like this happens, it touches so many people in our community. So I appreciate your comments. So now we will move on to our consent agenda. These are routine in nature generally, approved with a passage with one vote, unless somebody needs to pull something off. I will pull off 11.2. Are there any other items that trustees wish to pull off for discussion or vote separately? All right, is there an agenda motion to approve without 11.2?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
So I'll second.
Oops, I did it the wrong way. All right, there's been a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda without 11.2. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Wakashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Aye as well. All right, so 5.2, we do have some public comment on it as well. This happens to be an MOU about our COVID-19 cohort retention and recruitment program. Shall we hear the public comment first? Let's do that.
All right. First, we'll have Emily Shelley, followed by Matt Baptista, and then Andrew Ochoa.
Good evening, board members. My name is Emily Shelley, and I work at Kids Club. I have been a CSEA member for the past 8 years. I am here regarding the cohort MOU. From April 14th to May 29th, 2020, the district offered an essential workers supervision program, and Kids Club employees returned to work during an extended state mandate quarantine. At this time, the implications of COVID-19 were still unknown. June 15th to August 10th, 2020, Kids Club opened not just for essential workers, but for PUSD families having to return to work. Starting August 11th, 2020 to present, Kids Club staff made their buildings mimic that of a PUSD classroom. Desks, dividers, etc., all arranged to meet COVID guidelines for distance learning. Our staff worked tirelessly with certified staff to navigate virtual classrooms, became site techs troubleshooting issues, and became custodians diligently disinfecting high-touch areas in our classroom. Why? Because we were on campus while others were working at home. On September 14th, 2020, the district opened a supervision program for PUSD employees, children at More Kids Club. Again, the Kids Club staff are running this program. Time and time again, the district asked Kids Club to provide services beyond our before and after school program and did not include us in this MOU. CSEA stated we were removed over and over again by the district. I am asking that you renegotiate this MOU to include Kids Club, as we have been working in person with children for a full year under COVID-19 to support the PUSD community and their employees. Thank you.
All right, next we'll have Matt Baptista, followed by Andrew Ochoa, and then Trisha Harvester.
Good evening, Superintendent Haglund and all of our school board members. I'm Matt Baptista, and I've worked at Kids Club as a CSEA member for the last 9 years. I'm here regarding the MOU Emily just spoke on as well. When the district asked Kids Club staff to return to work, we were in an extended state mandated lockdown. Other jobs in the community, not just first responders, were receiving hazard pay. This pay was for jobs having direct contact with the public, adults, and children alike. During this time, masks were not required for children 12 and under. This put staff at great risk. CSEA asked for hazard pay based on our contract with parents and children. This was denied. When the cohort numbers increased from 10 to 12 children, CSEA continued asking for hazard pay. It was again denied. When the district decided to open the campus cohorts, the cohorts were at 14 children and they needed staff to return to work. They offered a 5% increase to staff agreeing to return. Kids Club increased their cohorts as well, yet received no hazard pay or a 5% increase. Now we are also left out of the MOU to receive a $600 stipend. The only difference, Kids Club staff have been working a full year during COVID, and the cohorts worked from October 14th to March 11th. I'm asking you to reconsider this MOU. Please encourage the district and CSEA to renegotiate to include Kids Club, as we have been working in person with children longer than cohort programs and with no additional compensation. I'd also like to end by congratulating all of the Kids Club sites and staff. Throughout this school year, we will have assisted getting students of the district onto over 100,000 Zoom calls and submitting work through Seesaw, Google Classrooms, Google Slides, using Lexia, Clever, and Extra Math to help support their academic achievements. Thank you for your time.
All right, next we'll have Andrew Ochoa and then finally Trisha Harvester.
Good evening, board members. My name is Andrew Ochoa, and I work at Kids Club, and I've been part of CSEA for about 7 years. I would like to discuss this MOU. The Kids Club staff worked diligently within the CDC, Alameda County Public Health Department, and district guidelines to ensure a safe environment for the children and staff. CSEA worked relentlessly to get us the necessary PPE needed to open in June. Our staff formed committees to create COVID guidelines for staff or for parents, a staff handbook, and completed the necessary training from Keenan and CDC on safely including proper use of new cleaning, disinfecting products, and how to ventilate rooms. We created temperature logs, followed screening questions, planned curriculum to engage children in restrictive environment, and procure equipment that could be sanitized. Our staff did all the preparation, training, and groundwork to implement a successful and safe COVID plan to our PUSD families. The groundwork gave the district a template of what is needed to open a campus cohort, yet we were not included in this MOU. We are continually adjusting our programs to meet new standards. We continue distance learning each Wednesday when there is no in-person instruction. The campus cohorts are closed, therefore no one else is offering the service that has been deemed for children at risk. Please reconsider the MOU to include Kids Club staff who have continually worked to help children be successful in any learning environment. I also would like to quickly add that many of our parents and staff received a copy-pasted response stating that Kids Club was not a cohort and they just provided only daycare. In all of the letters received, had you taken the time to read them, you would have realized that Kids Club provides much more than just daycare. Not only was your statement incorrect, but it was quite disrespectful for the amount of work our staff have put in over the past year and beyond that. Thank you for your time.
All right, next we'll have Trisha Harvester, and I apologize, I missed one. After Trisha, we'll have Sammy De Silva, and that'll be our final comment.
Hi, my name is Trisha Harvester. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. I have 2 children who attend Vintage Hills Elementary and have utilized Kids Club services since 2018. President Larson, you were kind enough to reply to my initial email at the top of the week when I thought that the exclusion of Kids Club from the MOU was just an unfortunate incident. It's my understanding now that that has become a choice, and a choice that I would like you to change your mind on. When calling out the MOU itself, it specifically cites that students in person in a classroom setting for the majority of the day. Right now, Kids Club operates from 7:30 in the morning to 5:30 p.m., long past the hours of before and after school that it first started at in 2018 that I know of when I first joined the program with them. They educate my children, they care for their safety and their well-being literally in a classroom setting, which is vastly different than what Kids Club was specifically intended for, but they grew and they owned it because they love their kids and they love students. I want to cite this. In a year where online learning has been difficult, they open up the computers with the kids. They're there to remind them to pay attention to the teacher on the other screen, trying to keep everyone's attention. They sit with them afterwards to open up every app under the sun to go through the homework that they have to do that day. They teach them how to write their E's. They print down that same homework when they want that student to do it by hand. They upload it back to the teacher. This goes above and beyond anything that would be called daycare or babysitting. In a world where working parents have to decide whether what spouse was going to stay home, which is disproportionately towards women in this country, Kids Club was there to answer the question for us. They kept both of my husband working as well. I remit, and I would be remiss if I did not tell you this was a very poor decision and ultimately not correct as to how you treat people who stepped up. Thank you.
All right, and finally we have Sammy De Silva.
Hi, my name is Sammy De Silva. I have been working as a CSEA member for 3 years, and I am working at Valley View Kids Club. I also worked at the Student Supervision Program that was hosted at Hearst Elementary School in April and May of 2020. I'm also speaking in regards to the MOU. I would like to say on November 12th, 2020, the small cohort program, Kids Club, and the employee cohort were recognized by the board. Certificates of recognition were given for our support of families, children, and teachers for in-person instruction. Based on that, we felt we were equal as we were doing essentially the same job to help students. Kids Club offers support to families regardless of a hybrid distance learning schedule or after-school program for socialization. Staff continues to be innovative in ways to support the children and provide them with a secure sense of normalcy during these times. Since the elementary and secondary emergency relief funds are funding this MOU, and Kids Club has been operating various programs as a relief to the PUSD community under the time of emergency and urgency, we feel we should be included in this MOU. If our continued support of the PUSD community, families, and most importantly, the success of the children does not demonstrate that we have been on the forefront of working during this pandemic, we would like to know who is. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your public comment. So I would like to ask Mr. Hernandez to explain what this, which apparently I didn't do a very good job of in my communication to some community members, what the purpose of this MOU is.
Thank you, President Larson. So the purpose of the MOU was to retain and recruit personnel for cohorts, which was a state mandated issue for our school district to try to support designated students with needs. So that was the intent of this cohort. Kids Club individuals, in fact, other classified positions were also invited to participate in the cohorts. We did have 2 members of Kids Club be part of the cohort process. And we allowed them to cross over from their classification to support the cohorts from the inception of the program. But again, the intent was to not only support but recruit staff to be able to support the cohorts specifically.
So is it fair to say that we tried to get people to participate, to do the work, do this work, and we were unsuccessful?
That's correct. Not only did we try, but CSEA leadership attempted and worked together hand in hand in attempting to recruit staff for the cohorts. We made phone calls, we reached out to classified staff to work with them to be able to staff these specific needs that the district had. So we all really did pull in together to try to support this. As a result, the district presented to CSEA a 5% increase in pay for those individuals that were supporting the cohorts, and that is in an MOU. Again, trying to recruit and retain personnel specifically for that need. The cohorts were divided into special needs particularly, but also there were general needs. Again, as one of our parents spoke today, that particular group was in desperate need of in-person support, which the cohorts provided. Therefore, we were able to support it financially to attract all classified employees that had an interest in participating in the program.
And when you say this was a mandate, this was part of the distance learning, part of the law that was allowed the distance learning. We were still required to provide these services to students.
That's correct, President Larson.
So are there questions by the trustees?
Yes, President Larson. Julio, I just wanted to just double check to make sure the public understood. So once again, who were the students that have been attending the cohorts, and how is it different than the students who attend Kids Club?
So again, the majority of the students in the cohorts were special needs students. We were targeting, again, paraeducators that were working with our special needs students, but we did not limit it to that. We did extend the invitation and the offer to all classified. We eventually posted a specific job description, again, working with CSEA and developing those job descriptions and salary schedules to be able to recruit staff, community members to come and support that program. So we've been involved CSEA throughout the process in attempting to support our cohort program.
But in contrast, the students that are attending Kids Club, who are those students? Just to clarify, there's a big distinction between the students who attend the cohorts versus the students who attend the Kids Club.
So again, in Kids Club, it is a variety of students. There may be students with special needs as well as 504s in the Kids Club program.
Do parents pay to have the children attend the Kids Club?
They do pay to attend the Kids Club program. Yes, they are CSEA members, but the Kids Club is it's a paid service that the district offers.
Okay, I think it's important that the public understands there's a distinction between the cohorts and Kids Club. So, okay, that was what I was trying to get at.
Thank you, Trustee McCosh.
Thank you.
Mr. Maher.
Julio, at the time of the beginning of the negotiation regarding the stipend, were we losing cohort instructors and paraprofessionals?
Thank you, Trustee Maher. So in order to recruit staff to initially start the cohorts, that was a difficult journey. Again, we offered the 5% bump in pay in order to offer that. And we allowed Kids Club staff to be able to switch over. Like I said, there were 2 that did. Then this MOU was presented because there were staff that were in the cohorts that was diminishing. And we were offering the $600 or this MOU to have a financial incentive to retain the staff that currently was there, but also to recruit staff continuously. Again, we are still wanting to have an increased cohorts for our Wednesdays and other times in order to provide that instruction to our students. So the need is still there, and we're still actively recruiting.
So Kid Club personnel could apply to work on that Wednesday if they wanted to?
Absolutely, they can.
Would they be eligible for the stipend after they worked the amount of hours, or?
So that is, again, the way that the MOU is written is after 40 days in the time frame. But if that were the case, again, we would have to come back and renegotiate the time of the MOU and the window. That is not currently there.
I just have one other clarifying question. So once again, the stipend and this plan was originally put forth because of staffing issues and not being able to retain the staff that were being hired to manage the cohorts.
Trustee McCoshie, that is correct. We offered, again, the 5% initially at the start of the program to recruit and retain. As the program advanced, we were losing staff. Then we offered the $600 to encourage staff to stay, and also to encourage to recruit staff with that amount of money as well.
Okay, thank you.
Just to be clear, any staff member that chooses to be part of the cohorts it qualifies for the 5% because that was the agreement in the original MOU. If we wanted to extend that, we would have to renegotiate the 600 portion of it, not the 5%.
Any further questions or comments?
I think just one more. So are there still openings available for the cohorts and staffing?
So we are always interested in staffing. Again, we have the Wednesdays where we have the opportunity to grow our cohort program. And there's still a need in our general ed world and some in our special ed world as well to be able to offer those opportunities for our students, particularly on the Wednesdays.
That said, as we bring more students back for more time, the need for the cohorts will go away.
Thank you.
Mr. Dialazzo, it's under my, I guess I was understanding that you actually had to collapse some of the cohorts because we did not have the personnel?
That's correct, Mr. Maher. So at the beginning of the cohort, when we established those cohorts, we had students that were interested. We had staff that possibly were able to work. But after that start, we did have to collapse a few because we did not have the staff to continue a few of our cohorts. That's correct.
Okay, so if there's no more further questions or comments, I'll seek a motion for approval of 11.2.
I'll move approval of 11.2.
Is there a second? I'll second.
So my comment then is that I definitely want to make sure everybody knows how much we appreciate everybody who's come on to campus for working. You know, that is a different issue than this particular one. I think that's the point that is being made here. So, you know, just to be clear, this is a vote for a stipend for a particular state-mandated program that we had to find staff for, not doing, you know, the regular job. As wonderful and as amazing as the people who did provide services during that time, you know, is. So anyway, that's just my comment there.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, you know, the efforts that we took to provide these services to these students, although mandated, you know, across all school districts in California, there were other school districts that were just were not able to offer this, and you know, there were some significant consequences, and we provided the services to the students who needed it. In addition, and it was difficult to recruit staff members, and so you know, we've processed this before. The work that our other staff members have done, I think from this dais, we've frequently commented on how you know, how much we've appreciated the work of Kids Club employees. The difference being that this was a specific targeted need that was different than the work that our employees do every day, and well, and with love and care. But this was different than a regular employment process. So, any other comments by anyone else?
Just quickly, what was the time frame hourly? How long were the cohorts working with students each day?
To 3:30.
Yeah.
I know. I think it was
Trustee Maher, so 8:30 to about 1:10, 1:15 for the cohorts.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve 11.2. I'll call the roll. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Mokashi?
Aye.
Maher? Aye. Miller?
Aye.
And I as well. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback and not just the Kids Club employees that contacted us, but the parents who contacted us to express your appreciation for their service and their care of your children during this year, and we thank you for those comments. All right, now we're going to move on to our report discussion and possible action items. The first up is 12.1. This is the letter that Dr. Haglund was referring to earlier. At the urging of Trustee McCaughey, we worked on a letter to the governor to address the concerns that we have about the things that we'll need to really put a good plan in place for our full return to in-person instruction. And at the time we drafted this letter, there were some additional rules that were in the letter that we were asking to have clarification, one of which was the 3-foot to 6-foot distancing. We did some quick rewrites to get that cleared up after the rules were changed. And like everything else this year, once we make a plan and we execute the plan, 2 seconds later, circumstances change again, and we now need to revise the plan. So this was a teeny, tiny little exercise in that compared to what our staff has been doing all year. We continue to appreciate further clarification from the California Public Health Department as well as Alameda County Public Health, where we, as we move forward in our process for the rest of this year. But this letter is addressing what we would like to ask of the governor and the CDPH. We really do want some clear metrics that we can, I don't want to use the slip and slide metaphor, but in other words, when it is safe, we can do X, and when there are concerns, then we should do Y, and we'd really like to have that in the, sooner rather than later for planning purposes, to demonstrate, to help us plan for the fall, but also to demonstrate our commitment to returning to full-time in-person instruction when we come back to school. Is there anything you'd like to add, Dr. Haglund?
No, actually, I think you did a really awesome job. The letter's pretty self-explanatory. It was interesting seeing the guidance shift even as we were drafting the letter. But this letter is not reflective of our total advocacy efforts either. And so we've been really pushing on folks from a lot of different angles for a while. So it's good to start seeing the guidance come together. It used to be literally 3 separate sets of guidance: the CDC, the California Department of Health, and the Alameda County Health Department, and they were not well synced together. And so over the course of the last, 6 to 8 weeks, the county and the state have been really working hard to align their documents so that they're not unintentionally providing conflicting guidance. And so the one large remaining issue from my perspective is the issue of stable grouping requirements. And, I'll just, for fun, can I read something out of the guidance? Just to kind of show what I'm talking about. So within the CDPH guidance under stable groups for middle and high schools, it says, CDPH does not require schools to create stable groups. And if you stop reading at that point, you go, cool, we can do a 7-period day, we're good, we're set to go. But then you keep reading. Instead, CDPH provides a number of potential approaches to stable groups for middle and high schools. So it's like, are you saying we don't do them, or are you going to tell us how to do them? So when we say clear messaging, that's an example of what I'm talking about. So I hope people listen to what I said in my opening comments. It is absolutely our intention to bring kids, our goal, as long as everything works out the way we hope that it will, to bring kids back full-time in the fall. That's the plan, and that's what people should be planning for. And as possible, in conjunction with our negotiations partners, we have existing MOUs that we need to bring in alignment to the guidance. That's not, to not do that work is not building long-term relationships that are going to help us, drive our relationships with teachers and hence the relationships between teachers and students. And so it's in everybody's best interest to respect the lines where the lines are and to work to motivate the shifting of those lines as we can, and I think we can. So I'm not concerned about that particular issue that some folks have been raising in the public square. But we're fully committed to the idea of bringing folks back and even starting to make some of those transitions sooner rather than later. And so our teachers, when I talk to them, you know, they're so thrilled. And I loved Nicole's comments tonight about, you know, even having a few kids in the room has improved the interaction, and you see that weight drop a little bit off the shoulders of the teacher, and they're able to connect with the real human beings in the room, so it benefits the students who are not in the room. So, Rachel, I said Nicole, I'm sorry. I guess that's all I really wanted to say, is to just give that one example of what we're talking about when it comes to inconsistent guidance. The clearer they can be to us, the clearer we can be in our processes of working with our employees and communicating with our parents. And so I think this letter helps push out that particular idea, which is one of the few remaining issues that I'm seeing standing in our way.
Are there any questions or comments by the trustees?
Go ahead.
Trustee Maher?
So Dave, regardless of the letters, and I'm hearing you say that we're still pushing forward for the full-time, unless we get told differently.
So remember, just for fun, everybody close your eyes and think back about last July 14th. And we were here in this room, or 15th, I don't remember what that is. You don't really have to close your eyes, Janelle. We were here in this room and we were talking about a plan to have schools open when we started school in August. And then boom, we got hit with a surge and things shifted. So I want folks to realize that this is not just a we like to do this or we want to do that environment that we're in right now. This is a global pandemic and we don't know how it's going to behave. Right now, it's doing a good job moving us in the direction that we would like to go, and that's absolutely our intention. I just don't want anybody coming up and saying, but you said later on if the data drives us in a different direction. I've said this all along from the very first day, we are going to make decisions that are based on what we believe we can safely do for our kids and for our staff. And when it's safe, we'll do it. If it's not safe, we need to be cautious about our approach.
I think most parents that have contacted most of us get that. If something catastrophic happens or something goes sideways, they understand that we have to do what we have to do. I just don't want the state with their ambiguity causing us to have heartache and not move forward.
Yeah, the feeling of ambiguity, which is kind of the point behind the letter, has been one of the driving frustration factors for us who are trying to lead in this environment, because it's like you're walking on top of Jell-O, and it's just hard to find your footing in that regard. So we're all hoping for that, and anybody who knows me knows I want to be with kids on schools, in classrooms. That's where I want to be. So I'm hopeful, Steve. I think that's exactly where we're going.
Although this is not an agenda item, you also mentioned as we move forward this year that we're going to be looking at other situations where we might possibly be able to open up.
So yes, I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about how we might be able to increase the time students have. That's something we have to negotiate, so we've got to get into those processes.
That's a hurdle, I understand.
And I know that some teachers are already doing that, and some principals are supporting that work by teachers. And so we're not going to get in their way, but we do want to be able to, within the new guidance, deliver as much services as possible to students.
Have to do it correctly.
Yes.
First off, I have to say thank you for that image of you walking on Jell-O. I'm sorry. Anyone else?
President Larson and Superintendent Hagel, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to put the letter together and squeezing it to put it into the agenda for this week, and working over into the weekend to make those modifications. It really means a lot for me to be honored to be on this board and the collaborative teamwork. And, just to say that, one of the compelling reasons why I brought it to you, President Larson, is, thinking back to all the the work that Dr. Hagland and the executive cabinet and the staff have been doing, making modifications, changing on the fly when we get different directions. And so, it's an important message, not only to send to the governor, but, within the community that, we need the guidance so that we can be most effective in the time given so that we're not wasting time. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Would you like to make the motion?
Yes, I make a motion to approve this letter. Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. That's been moved and seconded to approve item 12.1, which is our letter to the governor from the Pleasanton Unified School District Board of Trustees. Trustee Carrion.
Aye.
Trustee McCashy.
Aye.
Trustee Maher. Aye. Trustee Miller.
Aye.
And I as well. All right, we will get
Trust-
that sent off. I do believe we have a little signing ceremony at the end here to take care of this. Oh,
We have one public comment on this item, if it's not too late.
well, of course, it's not too late, but, yell at me or something.
I will.
I can't see you over there. Please proceed.
All right, our one public comment on this item is Kate Duggan. So go ahead.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak. I'll be quick. I completely support the action to write to the governor's office and ask for clarity. I think that the action is great, and I'm glad we're doing it. I was just kind of wondering, since Berkeley and Albany and other school districts have committed to going back full time, and neighboring districts are already saying that, then in my mind, the cohorts and stable group change that was made last weekend is clear to other districts because they're moving ahead, into these new plans because, the understanding when I talk to these parents who are also attorneys are saying it's just a purple tier restriction right now. So I totally understand the action, but I do wonder, it's just curious when Pleasanton has to get more clarity, but we see Berkeley and Albany and other Alameda County cities sort of moving ahead. Or at least making commitments that Berkeley did yesterday that they're definitely coming back full time. And the other thing I was just going to say, the letter should go out, but honestly, I think if we want all kids to be back in school full time, the biggest change that we want the state to make is not to extend the learning distance waiver into next year, since that's what killed, a lot of momentum to get kids in the classroom this year. So if we want to be back to in-person instruction, then it's asking the state not to extend the learning distance waiver. And so I just wanted to, if the letter's going, that's great. But I think that we should be expecting a response from the state next week. And I really hope we can still get a commitment to going back full time. That can be something we could be assured about. We totally get that there'll be changes, but I hope this letter is not riding on a response. And that's going to be the only thing that makes the district commit to full-time return. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. All right. Thank you. We actually, as you've noticed, we had already voted. Again, please, Patrick, if you would get my attention if there's public comment on the other items that are coming up. Report and discussion on the overview of elementary instructional minutes prior to Senate Bill 98 and remote instruction, item 12.2.
Thank you.
Dr. Woodward.
Good evening, President Larson, trustees, Dr. Hagland, Cabinet, and Pleasanton Community. Before the board this evening is a report and discussion of some initial thinking regarding elementary instructional minutes. This is not an action item, and upcoming discussions are scheduled with Director Galletti at each elementary site, respectively. This presentation is a review of student instructional minutes that should be provided to students and also reflects teacher-to-student contact minutes, along with some possible ideas as to what full-time elementary program might look like next year. I do want to point out that the analysis of minutes you will hear this evening are based upon the traditional schedules that were established pre-pandemic and before the onset of SB 98 and the most recent rulings on that. Elementary Director Galletti will present the report. Ms. Galletti?
Thank you, Dr. Woodward. And good evening, President Larson, trustees, Dr. Haglund, cabinet members, and community. If you give me a minute, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can start the presentation. There are 3 goals for this presentation. First, to understand the discrepancies in instructional time for students across POSD's 9 elementary schools. Second, to understand the difference between instructional minutes and teacher-to-student contact minutes. And third, to summarize next steps to align instructional minutes for all students at the elementary level. On this chart, displayed on the blue column, you will see the state requirement for the minimum number of instructional minutes per year prior to the pandemic. Displayed on the green column are the number of minutes that cannot be exceeded for teacher-to-student contact time per the negotiated contract. Instructional minutes per the state are the number of minutes an individual student receives in-seat or at-school instruction. For elementary students in 1st through 5th grade, this would include both the time in the classroom with their teacher and the time they spend with the music, PE, and science teachers. However, recess and lunch do not count in the calculations for 1st through 5th grade. TK and kindergarten differ in they do not have PE, music, and science taught by a specialist, and recess is counted in their instructional time. It is important to note that minimum days only count for the time students are receiving in-seat instruction and not the entire school day. Teacher-to-student contact minutes are the number of minutes a teacher is instructing students. The pre-pandemic school day was 8:15 a.m. to 2:50 p.m. Therefore, teacher contact time would include the minutes staff is instructing students. Subtracted from that time would be lunch and preparation periods. So science, music, and PE periods count towards a student's instructional time. However, they do not count for the grade level classroom teachers' contact minutes with students. This chart shows a comparison of the instructional minutes for TK through 3rd grade. When you look at kindergarten, you can see that the school with the most instructional minutes is 40,720, and the school with the least instructional minutes is 36,000. Please note that 36,000 is the state minimum requirement. In 1st grade, you can see that the school with the most instructional minutes is 55,960, whereas the school with the least instructional minutes is 49,660. Again, the state minimum for 1st and 2nd grades is 50,400. Moving to 2nd grade, with the school with the most instructional minutes is 55,960, and the school with the least instructional minutes is 50,440. Comparison of minutes for 3rd grade through 5th grade. As you read down each grade level's column, you can see that discrepancies exist between the schools, but they are not as large as they are in the earlier grades. In conducting the audit of instructional time, the difference was calculated between the school with the greatest minutes and the school with the least minutes. The accumulation of the extra time over the school year showed that kindergarten students attending schools with the greatest minutes received approximately 24 more school days, and 1st and 2nd grade students attending schools with the greatest minutes received approximately 22 more school days. Differences in instructional minutes for the lower grades occur from schools implementing staggered to those not implementing a staggered school day. In a staggered day schedule, half of the class attends from 8:15 to 1:55, and the other half of the class attends from 9 to 2:50. If you recall from slide 3, student instructional minutes are only counted for the time students are in seat, which means students in a staggered schedule receive 45 minutes less instruction 4 days a week in comparison to students on a non-staggered schedule. Now, slight differences in time for all grade levels occur when recess and lunch minutes vary. The slight daily differences of time, for example, a 15-minute recess versus a 10-minute recess, adds up over the course of the school year. In preparation for 2021-2022, we expect instructional minutes to return to the pre-pandemic requirements. We also want to create instructional minutes that remain consistent over time. It is important that we exceed the state minimum to ensure requirements are met in the event of school closures. School closures could be due to natural disasters, emergencies, or continued uncertainty with the pandemic. 3 years ago, I knew this all too well when I was the principal at Fairlands. Schools did close in PUSD due to the air quality caused by the Northern California fires. We were lucky that the day that was closed fell on the Friday of elementary conference week, in which students were already scheduled not to attend, so it did not affect our instructional minutes that year. And although we now have remote learning classrooms, we cannot rely on internet and power to ensure that we can teach remotely in the event of an emergency closure. Furthermore, in the event we have to shift back to remote learning next year, we want to build in time for teacher preparation, similar to what we utilized in March of this last school year. It is also important to note that last school year, 2019-2020, and this school year, the state waived the instructional minutes requirements, but we cannot count on the requirement to be waived within subsequent years. Moving towards next year, maximizing instructional minutes will provide more time during the school day for intervention, designated ELD, and enrichment. Learning loss is expected and should be planned for as a result of the and students not being able to access remote learning. We can maximize the time by extending our TK and kindergarten student minutes to 4 hours, implementing a non-staggered day for first and second, and shortening the upper grade lunch from 55 minutes to 45 minutes. To further support extending instructional minutes, current research shows that learning loss is expected in English language arts and math for all students, and will be greater for our historically marginalized populations. Per Educational Code 46100, school boards determine the length of the school day for the grades and classes of schools maintained by the district. The board must also maintain the day for specific grade levels across elementary schools is for an equal length of time, which is specified in Ed Code 37202. To ensure consistency across the school sites and to ensure we are following Ed Code, the district needs to align daily instructional minutes. Currently, our principals are working with their staff to provide an overview of the minutes similar to the overview I have given tonight, and proposals for new instructional schedules for 2021 and 2022. Teachers are being asked to provide feedback through a Google form, and I will be facilitating teacher feedback sessions at each elementary site to seek pros and cons of the instructional minutes and possible alternatives. The information gathered from the feedback and from the site feedback sessions will be used to finalize proposals, and a summary of the feedback and a recommendation will be presented to the board in May. Now I will open it up for questions, and I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you, Shay. Questions? Trustee Carry-On.
So, as an elementary teacher, I'm very passionate about reading, and I'm also very passionate about giving teachers the tools that they need to teach. I understand that we need to have closer alignment. These schedules do vary greatly. But I am very concerned about not having the option for staggered reading. I would like to see the schools aligned, but I also would like to see the option of having a staggered reading schedule. When I was noticing this, I noticed that 8 out of the 9 first grade classes have a staggered reading schedule now. 5 out of the 9 second grade classes have a staggered schedule now. I feel that we really, in the years past, we have had committees where our teachers have come once a year and they have discussed staggered reading. I feel that we need to do more engagement of our teachers. And my question I'm asking, are we engaging teachers in this decision-making process, or are we informing them? I do feel that this is an equity issue, and I'm going to talk to you about my own personal experience with the student I had pre-pandemic. This student was below grade level, and he's going to be exactly what you're going to talk about in your equity. He had a lot of challenges. So I was able to have this child in early reading, and we also platooned at Alisal. So this child had only 4 students with 1 teacher. Then the student would have intervention at 10, and then because we had staggered reading, this child would come again for a 3rd time. So this particular student got 3 periods of intervention. So I would argue that if all schools were exactly the same, this student would actually get less. So again, the issue for me is I want teachers to be able to be involved in choosing, because one school may not need staggered, but another school may. We need to empower our teachers. Again, equity is not equality. I feel that some teachers need staggered reading as an option in grades 1 and 2. I think you already have it for K. Teachers need to be able to have the freedom, flexibility, and option depending on their school needs. When I was a teacher, I knew that when I had staggered reading, the quiet students would shine. And more importantly, I was able to develop closer relationships with students. Especially with the pandemic, we need more mental health. They need to have more of a connection. And for me, I really need to see a staggered reading option. So again, I would like to see more teacher engagement. Some teachers wrote and said that they got this proposal on a Friday afternoon and did not have any chance to talk about it. And again, I would like to see an option of staggered reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Carrion. I'll start with, per Ed Code, as I had mentioned, our minutes do need to be aligned at the elementary level. Staggered is an option. However, we need to figure out a way how we can increase our minutes. Right now, the staggered schedule that is currently in place, we are only have 440 minutes over the required minutes by the state. That is less than 2 days of a cushion. Now, if we don't meet the minutes within a required year, what happens is we either have to extend the school year to make up those minutes, or we have to add on time within that particular school year to the day so that we are in compliance. So if we were to stagger, which is a possibility, we need to still look at and play with the numbers of minutes so that we have over 440. You know, a good cushion would be that we have at least 5 minutes terms would be 5 days cushion. The next thing, in terms of teacher input, the proposals are just proposals. The Google form is really to have everybody have a voice, and so that some voices are not louder than others, because this is a issue where people are on both sides. And you can see in 2nd grade with, 4 of our schools staggered, 4 of our schools don't, and 1 school does an alternative, which is very similar to an alternative that is happening at our 1st grade, one of our 1st grades. And then, yes, only 1 school at 1st grade is not staggering, and then 7 are staggering. And so when we solicit feedback, it really is on the pros and cons of what the proposals are. It's on seeking different ideas on how we can increase our instructional minutes so that we're exceeding the time, and how students across the district can have the same number of minutes. I do think that's important. I do understand what you said about equity and is not equality. However, all students should have the same baseline, and then we can add on from there. The other thing that is already scheduled is the meetings with individual sites so that teachers can give their voices there as well. A task force is a good idea. I'm not sure it's a good idea in the current time we are in right now. It's been a really hard year, and I purposely look to be able to seek feedback, not to put more on teachers' plates, not to minimize their feedback, not at all. It was in an effort to be able to allow them to provide the feedback, but also not increase their workload.
Other comments, questions? Trustee Maher?
Ms. Galetti, do you have any data to back up? I know we haven't had testing in third grade. I know that's older grades, but when I look at some of the schools having such a large discrepancy in minutes, are the schools that are spending more time getting better results? Are they, are students still having more students in intervention? Do they have more special ed and so forth? Have we looked at that?
That's a great question. Yes, I actually, with our director of assessment, have been looking a lot at our data. One of the things that is difficult about staggered in the data is we don't have good data to support that staggered is working to help students succeed, but we also don't have good data to say the classrooms that are not staggering is better. And part of that is because there are so many variables to it. Staggered alone isn't the only variable. We can't account for student socioeconomic status and how many may be at a certain school. Are students with English language learners and how many are in a school or a classroom? Teacher training and experience. All of those factors play in. And so, we look at what could be. So when we look at our CASP scores, and that is, of course, starting in third grade, but you would hope the trajectory of staggered would continue to help improve CASP scores. It's pretty similar across the board, meaning our CASP scores don't vary too much by our schools. One of the things what I have worked on with our CSACE, our Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services, is that our students who are Hispanic and Latinx are not moving forward. Our English language learner students, even, and you'll see in the next presentation in high school, aren't meeting the same requirements as our students who are from our white or our Asian populations. And so when I look at that data, I don't feel we have a strong case to say that yes, staggered is working, or yes, no, it is not working.
President Larson.
Trustee McClatchy.
Yeah. So I want to look at this a little differently. I want to break it down for the public. When we talk about staggered, I just wanted to confirm what we're really talking about, if I'm understanding, Shay, is that this is when teachers are working with students in small groups for reading. Is that correct? Typically,
during the staggered time, teachers do reading instruction. The history of the staggered, and I know it well as a parent because it actually occurred when my child was in first grade. She's now a freshman in high school. We lost class size reduction. Class size reduction back in 2012-13 was 20-1. It went away, and our kindergarten, first, second, and third grades went to 30-1. To take away the impacts of the larger class size, staggered was implemented at kindergarten through third grade to reduce the numbers of students to help be more effective in reading. About 2 2-3 years later, after that, we gained class size reduction back. It did not go back to 20-1. It went back to 24, or it went to 24-1. At that time, third grade ended staggered and went the full day, 8:15 to 2:50. Kindergarten, first and second, continued to stagger. And then over time, individual schools made different decisions on what to do with staggered. And that's how we ended up with many second grades not staggering and the different alternatives in first grade.
Okay, no problem. So bear with me.
No problem.
Well, I'm going to lay something out, so just bear with the questions I'm asking. So what I hear from Trustee Carrion is the concern is the benefit of small group reading instruction for our students, which we know research-wise, that there's a lot of benefits for that small group instruction. So my question is, based upon the reading programs that you have in the district, how do those programs support small group instruction?
Well, small group instruction can happen in a number of ways, even in a class of 24 when they're all together. It can happen in stations, it can happen in guided reading, it can happen first in like how things are scaffolded.
Right, so it's my understanding you have two core curriculum for reading, Reader's Workshop and Benchmark. Do I have those correct, or others that support that small group?
Units of study and Benchmark Advanced.
Okay, so if a consistent literacy block was in place in all the schools, that would encompass the small group reading instruction that we're talking about, that we want to make sure our students have. Does that make sense? So like we have a staggered time, blocked period, a literacy block for reading and literacy, 120 minutes, and the Reader's Workshop, and a lot of the curriculums that support reading instruction really supports that ability for the teacher to navigate and have students work in those small groups, correct?
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
I'll go ahead and I'll just jump in here, Ms. Coletti. So, Trustee McCaughey, it would to some extent depend upon the instructional strategies that the teacher is using, and if they are breaking up their classes into small groups, if that's appropriate for that lesson, or if they're doing more whole class lessons. So every teacher would decide exactly how they're going to structure their lessons during the classroom. Schools also have universal access when they can do more of the small groups as well. And I just want to make it clear that the purpose of this presentation is not to advocate necessarily to remove staggered. It's to reinforce the importance that we are governed by Ed Code to maintain all of the elementary schools for an equal length of time. So we need to be able to figure out how to do that. If we can figure that out for some schools that may want to continue to stagger, that would be one thing. But we need to look at the number of student instructional minutes beyond just the bell schedule or the number of teacher contact minutes.
Right. I just meant that in general, the reading curriculum that the district supports that small group instruction fluidly in the curriculum. That's what I was just trying to say. So that bottom line, I feel that it's really important that we have consistent timelines and the minutes across all schools. I would say that I was very surprised to realize that the minutes of instruction at the elementary level is different from building to building. So I do agree that we need to have a consistent schedule. I was just saying that in response to Trustee Carrion's concern that in general the way that the reading curriculum that you have in the district does support that small group instruction. That's really what I was just trying to say. But I do think from an equity perspective, it's we need to have, whether we adjust the schedule, maybe, I know the way that the current schedule is with staggered, it's a whole hour difference. So maybe, there is consideration for that third option that Trustee Carrion's talking about, but maybe that staggered time is, maybe not it's a whole hour, but we can still extend the day, and maybe that staggered period is only 30 minutes, so that there is benefit for that small group staggered time with students. So those are my comments right now.
Trustee Miller, anything?
My other comment is that I have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for Shay and Janelle and so forth in terms of their experience being principal and all kinds of stuff in here. And so I really think we ought to. I think the plan for obviously setting the bar with the equity in minutes and that type of thing is a thing. Having the meetings with the site at the sites and everything is absolutely the right thing to do. So I'm very supportive of your process. I'm supportive of what decisions you guys make following the right process.
So for me, just I talked to Dr. Woodward a little bit before, since I showed up early today. And then got flustered because I was late at the meeting, so there you go. Yeah, ed code has to be followed. That's a requirement. And for me, it is also about not wanting students to have an educational lottery about depending on which school they go to. On the other hand, I like staggered. My children had the benefit of it. I've dealt with staggered before I was on the board, when we were calling it early bird, late bird. When we were on the board and it was about class size reduction, the loss of class size reduction, but it was also about, as was mentioned, the different school sites came up with proposals for what they would do during that time. There was the platooning, there was all of this different structures that they were going to do together to provide intervention. It wasn't just, small group reading time, but it was about intervention too. And then as we've moved along and the concepts of RTI were more adopted, and MTSS and the whole thing, and we went in and got universal access time, which is a different process. So we're doing a lot more of those things that we were trying to do with staggered reading. But I don't think it's appropriate, again, to not follow ed code and to have the different times. It's possible to come up with some additional options and still allow some differences at different school sites, as we did before, which was some schools stopped doing staggered, and we allowed that because we value the teacher perspective and the site flexibility to do that. I asked the same questions about whether or not we can say for sure whether this instructional strategy produces the results we're looking for or not. And so those to me are important questions. In the short run, we have some additional dollars that could be used to provide additional bodies, staff members, that could allow for some of that more more small group instruction that the teachers who are doing staggered and who value staggered really appreciate. And I do agree that close contact and those relationships, even though we're down to 24-1 from 30, after a year of students not being together with their peers and their teacher, would be valuable to make sure that, as part of our learning loss recovery plan, we can provide some of that. So, and I'm less concerned, Shay, to be honest, about the building in of the days, because on the days when we actually have a fire or a closure, we petition the state for a waiver. And we get our funding, and I'm not 100% sure whether the satisfies the instructional minutes component, but it definitely satisfies the ADA component in terms of our funding. When we have a natural disaster, we can petition for a waiver. But I do agree that as we move forward, and Director Galletti, as you're out with the school sites, listen, as I know you'll do, listening to the why and the how. Why do the people who believe in staggered believe in it, and how are they using it? More importantly, and is that instructional methodology that they're using, something we should be replicating, or is it the best instructional methodology that we can provide our students here in Pleasanton? So I look forward to hearing some other of the options that staff come up with, the teachers come up with, but again, our commitment to follow ed code is, I believe I hear very firmly that that's something the board obviously supports.
Thank you.
Question?
Sure.
So have we not been following ed code? We've been, just what?
So if we have met our minutes, so we've met that part of the ed code, and as we pass audits, they look at our minutes to make sure we pass instructional minutes. But the ed code that says that they have to be the same, no, we haven't. Is that a fair assessment?
It is indeed. The ed code actually reads, school boards must determine the length of the school day for grades and classes of schools maintained by a district. That's ed code 46-100. The board must also maintain all of the elementary day schools established by it for an equal length of time, and that's ed code 37202A.
So is there any public comment? Yay, okay, I asked.
All right, our one public comment for this item is from Miss Linda Stanford.
Good evening, President Larson and trustees, Dr. Haglund, members of the cabinet, Pleasanton Community, my fellow colleagues. My name is Linda Stanford, and I'm a first grade teacher at Moore School. I've been teaching in Pleasanton for over 25 years in first grade. I'm also a credentialed reading specialist. Over the years, I have presented in numerous staff development days which focus on reading, writing, and phonics. Yesterday, the first grade team at Moore sent to each member of the board a detailed document about the values and success of staggered reading. We also included a study supporting this. I'm not going to reiterate what we very carefully wrote, as we are trusting that each of you will read it thoroughly and hopefully have more questions for us. Tonight, I'm going to invite each of the board members to reach out and visit the different elementary sites or Zoom with us and have a real conversation with first grade teachers. I know at Moore, we would welcome a chance to actually talk about staggered reading, tell you how we do it, talk about the successes. We're willing to do this whenever you are available. You see, as teachers, we respect and honor collaboration. Through this, we are able to build upon each other's strengths, as we have developed over the years a tremendous trust among all of the first grade teachers here in Pleasanton. In the weeks ahead, it is our hope that you will learn why so many of us believe in the success of staggered reading. We believe the more you know about this, the better informed you can be when you make this important decision. So I just want to thank you very much for listening, and I know we're going to have lots of conversations about this in the future, and we welcome it immensely. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Any other? Okay, thank you, Mr. Gannon. All right, this was not an action item tonight, as was previously stated. It was just for discussion. So we look forward to hearing the report on the work, Director Galletti, that you do with the teachers and the staff between now and May 6th, when we'll come back to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item 12.3, this is a report, discussion, and possible action on an equity consulting agreement with Nicole Anderson and Associates. And Dr. Woodward, I believe you're up
Yes.
again.
Thank you. Before the board this evening is a presentation regarding the proposed agreement between Pleasanton Unified School District and Nicole Anderson and Associate Consulting, LLC, for multi-year equity support. This is presented as a report, discussion, and possible action. Assistant Superintendent Dialazzo and Directors Galletti and Graywall will also join in the presentation. So let's begin with what we already have in place, as it serves as the foundation for the critical work that we will engage in over the upcoming school years. Equity work is embedded into the strategic plan overall. In fact, bullets 2 and 3 stand out. Bullet 2 says all students and staff have the right to a safe and respectful learning environment that fosters positive connections. And this third bullet says public education should focus on the whole child, provide equitable opportunities for all students, and create socially responsible individuals with character and integrity. As well, our mission statement is that our students will make a better world. Our world will be a better place if we are able to cultivate a culture of inclusivity, respect for all, and better equip every student with the support, access to opportunities, and curriculum that is historically accurate and relevant. In 2016, the Board of Trustees adopted an Equity and Diversity Resolution. Linked in this slide is the entire document, and when one reads the document, the first 2 paragraphs stand out as to what equity means and why Pleasanton Unified School District places such a value on ensuring equitable learning experiences for all students. Mr. Dialazzo?
Thank you, Dr. Woodward. Resolution number 2015-2016.23, titled Equity and Diversity. I'd like to read the first 2 paragraphs. Whereas the strength and richness of our community is in its diversity, the Board of Trustees affirms its commitment to continuing the district's systemic efforts to build a society free of hatred, bigotry, and racism. Whereas equity and equality are not interchangeable terms, the concept of educational equity goes beyond formal equality, where all students are treated the same, to fostering a barrier-free environment where all students, regardless of background, have the opportunity to benefit equally. We believe that equity must be measured by access and outcomes. Dr. Woodward?
Thank you, Mr. Dialazzo. So this is a slide from Nicole Anderson and Associates Consulting, LLC, which demonstrates the overarching ideas we need to consider. As previously stated, we need to align our understanding of what equity means, giving our students what they need when they need it, while understanding that some students need more than others. It also means that we must recognize that students demonstrate success in different ways, and that we must make intentional efforts to shift mindset, policy, and interrupt systemic inequities. Having said this, we do face challenges in this work, many of which are reflected in historical practices, embedded into the curriculum, hidden in implicit bias or stereotypes, and are as a result of institutional racism in an ever-changing educational system. Very specific actions are needed to change policy, increase opportunity, change practice, shift resources and mental models, implement culturally relevant curriculum, and build cultural competencies for educators, as well as continuing to build respectful relationships with all stakeholders, including our marginalized students, families, and those that have experienced exclusion due to disabilities, while shifting mental models. Mr. Dialazzo?
Thank you. This slide will take a look at some data. So we've been looking at data now for several years, and as you recall, earlier this year, Elementary Director Galletti was the lead on our Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services Plan, or CSAS plan, where we were identified as significantly disproportionate in that our Hispanic Latinx students are 3 times as likely to be at risk for qualifying for special education under specific learning disability. Also, in the 2019-2020 data, Suspensions for our students who are African American made up a total of 10.17% of all suspensions. However, students who are African American comprise only 1.4% of the total student population. As well, our Hispanic, Latinx, and African American students fall behind their Asian and white peers in reference to meeting UC A to G requirements. I'd like to now turn it to Director of Elementary Education, Shea Galletti.
Apologize, I needed to unmute. Our work on the CSACE plan addressed the disproportionality found in PUSD special education programs. In doing this work, we found that basic reading skills and reading comprehension were the primary concern for the majority of Hispanic and Latinx students qualifying for special education. In addition, both the qualitative and quantitative data reflect that in comparison to white and Asian students, the PUSD school experience for students with disabilities and students of color is dramatically different. We uncovered the root causes of the disproportionality through data analysis, which proved that cultural dissonance and implicit bias within the PUSD system result in inconsistent application of discipline policies, procedures, and practices. Although action items outlined within the CSACE plan aim to address this root cause, cultural dissonance experienced by students of color and the implicit bias within the system will not change without a change to the entire PUSD system. And our work to systemically address these issues will bring the positive change we are seeking. I will now pass it back to Dr. Woodward to talk about the purpose of this plan.
Thank you, Ms. Galletti. So I'm just going to introduce this, and then Marta Graywell, our Director of Secondary Education, is going to add some context. So the question is, why hire a consultant instead of just doing this ourselves? There are several reasons that bring us to our purpose in doing so. Director Galletti, I'll have you take it from here. I'm sorry, Director Graywell, I'll have you take it from here.
Thank you, Dr. Woodward. In the past, our district equity work has been conducted on a predominantly voluntary basis. Prior to 2013, school sites had equity teams that read literature and held discussions with voluntary staff participation. Beginning in 2013, the Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity, or SEED initiative, was introduced in PUSD. SDR, staff development reform, and hourly pay were offered for any certificated or classified staff who wish to attend monthly SEED seminars on a voluntary basis. Since then, year-long SEED group seminars were facilitated annually for staff, while additional sessions were offered for management, PTSAs, and district leadership teams upon request. Over the years, SEED practices were infused in a variety of professional development settings, including the Common Core implementation committees, which involved representative staff from each school site at all grade levels and subjects. SEED strategies have also been employed in leadership meetings, as well as in the annual diversity celebrations held at PUSD school sites. As an outcome of many years of SEED work, more than 200 PUSD employees and community members have voluntarily participated in training over the years, and the PUSD Equity and Diversity Resolution referenced earlier. Despite these concerted efforts over the years, our equity work to date has not been systemic in nature, nor has it been implemented system-wide. If we wish our work to have a larger impact with a shift in thinking throughout the organization, there is a need to allocate dedicated time and resources for that purpose. Thus, our approach to equity will now shift from voluntary training to systemic and system-wide practice. We will draw upon Ms. Anderson's expertise to build our capacity to address issues of equity, racism, marginalization, and microaggressions, and to identify practices that contribute to inequity. She will assist with the revision of policy to close access and opportunity gaps through the development of a multi-year plan that provides ongoing professional development for PUSD staff. Our approach to this work will involve an intentional and deliberate process that demonstrates care and sensitivity to participants. Ms. Anderson will provide expertise as a coach and advisor using a systems approach to equity issues while establishing a safe space for all stakeholders to engage in dialogue. The work will begin with developing and supporting the capacity of all district and site leaders, and then that work will continue with all staff at the school sites. As we engage in dialogue to capture the voice of all stakeholders, we will participate in courageous conversations around implicit bias, systemic inequities, and institutional racism, which have been barriers to equitable outcomes for students, particularly our historically underserved and marginalized student groups. Next, I will pass to Mr. D'Alazzo to share further about the process.
Thank you, Ms. Graywall. If we drill down even more with national, state, and local data, historically marginalized students may sometimes get excluded or not provided equitable access to programs or supports due to race or disabilities. This information compels us to be more proactive. As we try to develop our equity master plan with the support of our consultant, we need to align our planning by incorporating all of our grants and other initiatives into a master plan that will address our needs for inclusive practice and access. An equity master plan can assist us in being strategic with our resources and laser focused on the issues of bias, race, and equity. Next slide. So let's talk about outcomes. Our students of color are unrepresented gate identification, academically competitive programs such as Comp Civics and DECA, and music programs, while being overrepresented with regards to suspension and special education identification. As well, on the California 2019 dashboard, English learners, also called emerging bilinguals, Hispanic, Latinx students, socially disadvantaged students, and students with disabilities are not meeting college and career readiness standards. And so, a key outcome is to ensure access and opportunity for all students in all areas of the school program. Additional outcomes include creating schools where there are safe and respectful environments for all students in which racially harmful words are no longer used, where disproportionate disciplinary actions for students of color are reduced, where our mindsets shift to advanced practices, where there is targeted outreach for historically underserved students, and where evidence is captured that indicates that implicit bias, systemic inequities, and institutional racism are decreased in order to eliminate the opportunity gap for all students. Dr. Woodward?
Thank you, Mr. D'Alazzo. So as we proceed through our work, as proposed tonight with Nicole Anderson and Associates Consultant Group, LLC, the work and time spent with our consultant and colleagues will increase as more stakeholders participate in workshops, task forces, professional development, coaching, equity walks, and much more. As we progress, we will develop a system that ensures that this work is embedded in all that we do, from lesson design, opportunities, and keep these topics at the forefront of all of our planning, building sustainability into all of our thinking moving forward so that after year 3, the focus on equity continues to be inherent into all of our practices. Here you see the cost breakdown, which will be funded mostly through LCAP supplemental concentration under our organizational work plan goal 4. This year, our work will involve our core leadership team, including the trustees and the executive and extended cabinet, so that we can be better equipped to lead this work in the upcoming years. We will engage in deep and reflective dialogue. So, as I said, we can lead systemic changes in year 2, year 3, and from there on in. As mentioned on the previous slide, you can see that the scope of the work increases as well in the next 2 years. In addition, I'd like to ensure the trustees that a district equity committee will still be developed and that sites will continue to develop their site equity teams as they have been doing, and that we would keep the trustees informed as to the progress that is made along the way. And now is our time for questions. And we do have Nicole Anderson with us tonight. She's available to assist in answering any questions that the trustees may have.
Thank you, Dr. Woodward. Who'd like to start? Trustee Miller.
Sure. First of all, Dr. Woodward, thank you for the articles like the one on the equity traps at a glance. That gave me a really interesting viewpoint on this. Basically, for the public, what this is sort of 10 different ways in which districts or whatever can engage in the, let's call it the equity improvement process. And I was going through there's things like you're just doing equity for equity's sake. There's one, what you talked about, Director Graywall, is the spray and pay equity. You pay people to go to classes, that type of thing. Anyway, there's all these different things, and I thought, well, we are a very well-meaning district. We do want to do this, and I think, we've probably fallen into some of these traps along the way. So the bottom line for me is we need to do something different to really move the bar. I don't know if this group is the thing. I mean, they seem to have a good resume and that type of deal. I definitely am supportive of trying something new. But whatever it is, we've got to make sure like you talk about the whole systems approach and the structural approach. I mean, this isn't just about people learning about stuff. They have to change. The culture has to change, right? And so I'm just concerned how hard, we've tried to do this at my work too, we're making progress, but it's still, how do we move that bar in a relative, so, I mean, I think this is a great, it has promise, I guess, is what I'm suggesting. My one question is, the contract is very small and light, and I don't know, we got a 3-year plan, how reasonable would it be for us at the end of obviously year 1 is very short, right? That's just a couple of meetings. At the end of year 2, we say, you know what, we're not seeing the progress that we think we can, or whatever it is. Can we get out of the contract at that point, try a different approach, whatever. It seems like it's a 3-year thing no matter what, and maybe that's what it takes, but anyway.
If you read the contract, there's a termination clause.
Missed that in there. I was looking at it.
So yes, the short answer is yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
If there were,
you're a more careful reader than I am.
If there were a concern, for sure.
Okay.
Anyone else before? Okay. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So I would like to know an example. So in our district, we have. I was kind of alarmed by that. With African American, 10.17% and only 1.4%. All right, I'll try this again. Thank you. This is a question for Nicole. I was kind of alarmed at our suspension rate. At African Americans, it's 10.7%, and we only have 1%. So Nicole, could you give me some examples of what you could do, what kind of strategies you would use to change this?
Yeah, great question. I really appreciate it. And first, thank you for having me tonight. Always excited to hang out with board members. It's one of my loves and passions in doing this work around the state. And so I could say, part of the reason why, and I just want to back up a little bit about just why equity gaps exist, period. And it's important to recognize like the historical context of public education. So if you do kind of a walk back in history, back to the 1600s, when you think about public education and why it actually was evolved into what it is today, is the purpose around educating kids was not necessarily to educate kids of color. It wasn't around educating girls. It wasn't even around educating poor students. And so when you look at that foundation as it evolved over the years, the reality is that we have slowly started to make those changes as we've started to educate more and more kids. And when you look at calling out students like African-American kids, you have to kind of go back to policies around segregation, right? Around even being allowed to be educated and to be literate. And when you fast forward to where we are in 2021, some of our policies and practices have a lot of mirroring to the past. And so when we look at things like, I think it was called out in the presentation around addressing kind of the mindsets, the mental models, and where kind of implicit bias sits. A lot of times when you look at the data and you go, well, wait, we only have like 1.4, percent of our kids, but yet they have this larger kind of disproportionate discipline rate. What it tells you is that there's some practices happening that have to be looked at around multiple things. And so implicit bias is kind of a harsh way of saying, like, there are some blind spots, right, and some ways that we may do things that are subconscious in our kind of educational practice over many years, including hundreds of years. And so when we fast forward to even looking in the classroom, you have to look at other things like the relationships, maybe the bias associated with cultural differences. So how we kind of determine what behavior is appropriate and what's not, sometimes is correlated to cultural differences. So without really unpacking that, what you'll see is there's a predictability. And so I can say transfer from Pleasanton to another client to another, all over really the nation. You see this same disproportionality in most districts. And it's not because African-American kids are not great students, or not brilliant, or are not able to behave in schools. It's that we have a structure in place that's kind of built around this cultural disconnect. So without unpacking, right, I'm sure you all kind of see your rules, like your class matrix, right, the expectations, without unpacking really the cultural nuance behind that, then what you'll see is continued disproportionality and more referrals, more suspensions. Again, not because the kids behave worse than other kids, but that you have a structure in place that you have to unpack. And so you'll see that predictability amongst most school districts, because we have some things within our system that are institutionalized that we often don't see explicitly without unpacking them. And so it's pretty complex, but you can predict that in most school districts, actually, depending on kind of the demographics. And it's definitely part of an awareness that you have to build, but also there's part of some policies and practices we have to look at, what is actually happening. I heard the word root cause. What is the root cause of that? Understanding that that data is very common and predictable. And again, it's not because the kids aren't brilliant, aren't intelligent, aren't great, students. It's just we have some things within the system that us as educators have to re-examine, and doing that in a way that doesn't push us into a corner of saying like, hey, we have a racist practice, which is often a common word used right now. But it's more about we have some biases and some blind spots that we have to re-examine. We have to do that in a way that's very safe, because none of us as educators want to be put in a corner to say like, it's our fault this happened. But the reality is we also have to own it as an educational body, that this is a predictable data point that unless you pause and really unpack it, it's going to continue. And so I'm happy you asked the question, because I think we could also address that with many other equity gaps, because you have more obviously than just that one. So what a great question. Thank you. And hopefully that helped a little bit with context.
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
Trustee McCoshey?
Yes. Okay. So this is something I'm really, really passionate about. My professional work, I do curriculum writing, and one of the clients I work with, a big push on working with teachers and overhauling equity practices with teachers. So just to clarify, I don't have any personal connections with the vendor, but just to give the context of my passion around this topic, I'd like to applaud the district for recognizing that this is an endeavor that needs to really be tackled wholeheartedly. It is a systemic change, and so I really appreciate this. I am most interested in the flexibility on the proposal of just asking the district to really think about working with the consultant, of picking the right people to be on whatever the task item is. So for example, in the equity walks, it describes it being facilitated with principals. I would love to see some teacher representatives take part of that, because, as mentioned, to make a difference and change, it has to come from the ground up. I do have a contractual question on, there's some items that are mentioned as webinars or virtual. I wanted to confirm with the district, post-COVID, will those sessions be on site instead of virtual?
So as much as possible, we'd like to do things on site. There may be some opportunities to be able to engage in virtual, but when we are walking into classrooms and doing those visits in the upcoming years, I don't expect that we'll be doing those virtually. I expect that we'll be walking around on the campuses together.
Okay, that's a really important question for clarity, because the daily rate is $4,000. And in general, that pricing, it is based upon, it absorbs, expenses, travel, for consultants on site. And for virtual, is there consideration for a rate change on that if it's done virtually versus on site?
So that would be a question that Ms. Anderson and I would need to speak about later and work that out, unless Ms. Anderson, you'd like to answer that now?
Absolutely. No, it's a great question, and thank you for asking it. It comes up often with consultants, and so I want to just kind of give a context of consulting in terms of daily rates. Often they're connected to what you see in the proposal, right? So you have a particular service that is provided, there's a certain number of days that are allocated. But what you'll find with this particular work is that consultant daily rates include not only preparation, but follow-up, the planning, and also the service itself that goes with that particular activity. So what often happens is people don't recognize that the consultation, right, the advising, when you look at like what I do for a living every day, sometimes people just see kind of the presentation or they see the facilitation, but don't see all of the, and I pull up on my desk, all the paperwork and all the planning and how, if you look at my calendar, there's a lot of planning that goes into this. So what you do is you create a daily rate that includes all of the services associated with that. So when you talk, what the better question I really appreciate is that virtual versus in person. So the daily rate has never changed when COVID came. But I will say this, and honestly, I've been probably more busy when COVID showed up. However, the ability to negotiate rates, typically you don't do once a contract is signed. I think the conversation should be, how do we plan those days effectively so that we can say, okay, with all of this uncertainty, because all of us would hope that COVID at some point magically disappears and we go back to our kind of normal interactions. But with the uncertainty, it is difficult to plan. And your district's not the only one that asks these questions. How do we plan our in-person and our virtual? So I would like to say this, is that in our conversations, as Dr. Woodward mentioned, is that we would have to sit and talk about, like, what does this look like? Because some things are unknown. Like, I would love as a consultant for you to tell me, what's the schedule going to look like next year? And you can't really tell me that, right? As far as you have to negotiate, your PD time with your teachers. You have a whole calendar that you put together with your principals, your executive cabinet, even with the board, right? You want to make sure that your calendar is really set and we can plan, and some of those things change. So I hope that helps a little bit about kind of the way we do consulting in terms of pricing. What I have done though, which I do want to share this, is there have been moments where we've done what we call half days, where we may say, hey, here's the daily rate, but within that rate you have 2 days or 2 sessions that exist because it's virtual, and it might be like 2 hours here, 1 hour here. So I have included that as options in terms of what you can look at if you remain on a virtual space for the next couple of years, but I don't see you doing that. But what I do like is the option of having the ability to do both, so that you can build an opportunity for more to engage at one time, which sometimes was hard to do before, like we can't be in one place at one time. So I think I like the option of being able to be flexible and really work through that with your district leaders to make sure it's a best fit for everyone. And also remember, there's a team of people that work with me as well. So when you look at consultants who should provide the rates, our rates are typically pretty average for the work we do. You're definitely welcome to do kind of a research around consultants who do similar work. But the reality is that, the value of this work, I also often say, is there's no price tag you could put on it. But the reality also is that, we have many clients who you're more than welcome to look at the proposal and see some of the districts who are surrounding, who are engaging in similar work that you're doing, similar districts. And I think have had a satisfactory experience from the rate of busyness we are in. So I'm really excited for the opportunity. And appreciate the question. Hope that helped to clarify.
Yeah, you answered the question. It's really about the flexibility and maximizing the time.
Absolutely.
And what one thing that I need clarification on I really asked it to the district. For me, when I think about, how this is going to impact our students, at the bottom line, we want to see improvement with our student achievement scores and how the teachers are interacting with their students and changing their own practice and their own behaviors. However, maybe it's how they're grouping their students, and be more cognizant of how they're grouping their students or the types of questions that they're asking. So in reading the proposal, I see a lot of collaboration with the cabinet, site leadership teams, but, and this is probably more to the district, how do we see working directly with the teachers and the training on-site? I know that there's contractually 1 day set aside for each campus to work with leadership team, but how do we envision the actual face-to-face time with teachers, and how much time are we seeing with that? Because when I think about this plan, it's a 3-year plan, but what gets me most anxious is we need to get in the front of the face with our teachers simultaneously. So if you could help clarify that for me,
Sure.
Dr. Woodward.
Happy to do that. So we start with our leadership because we all need to be grounded and aligned in what this means and and how to handle some of these sensitive conversations, to have some coaching on how to move forward in terms of the next steps at each school site. So we equip our leaders with the skills and the tools that they need so that they can carry this work, not only when the consultant is here on campus, but every single day. And so within that context, then we can begin thinking about, okay, when we do this work with the equity walks, when we have our professional development on our Wednesdays or whatever days we end up having the collaboration day, then how would we do our professional development? Can we do some of the professional development if we have full release days? Can we use those models? So we can continue to work and I believe, Nicole, when we were talking earlier, we were talking about, if there needed to be a little bit of flexibility to move things around to meet the needs that emerge at that time. So there is absolutely a plan to be able to bring this to not only just the teacher level, but also to the level of all staff at the school site.
So I would just, thank you. I would just really state that I know that there's this approach to work with, the cabinet, the governance board, and trickle down. I do think there's ways to do it in tandem. Whether I know there's 3 professional development days allotted at the district level, but just, be thinking about how to work in tandem at the teacher level so that we can, really keep them dialed in. And to add on to that, one area I see that would be really neat to incorporate, the reading intervention specialists with the CCEIS plan. How do you see that working together? Because we've already been flagged, federally with supporting our marginalized students. So can you share a little bit, for the public's benefit, how that will work in with this professional development proposal?
So the implicit bias and some of the other root causes are going to be in many cases the same. And so, like Mr. Dialaza spoke earlier, we want to have a seamless system. We want to ensure that our grants, our various initiatives, the things on which we spend our time, and that includes the CSES, are all aligned to achieve the same outcomes. So I can't tell you absolute specifics that will unfold in year 2 and in year 3 at the moment, but I can say that this is being strategically introduced right now. This was written into our CSACE plan. So we have taken intentional steps to make sure it is all aligned and integrated, and we're also bringing on a coordinator of access and equity, and they can serve as well as a key contact when we work with Ms. Anderson and her firm, and as well as for the work that takes place, boots on the ground at each of the sites.
Okay, thank you. I'm super excited, very passionate about this, so it really means a lot that it's going to support all-encompassed, not only at the leadership level, but with our students, eventually with our students, and, the support with our teachers as well, because it will be changing mind frame and how we do practices. So it's going to be a very exciting endeavor.
Ms. Anderson, you had a comment?
I do. I want to make sure I speak to the teacher piece. This is really big, and I heard you say we want the community to hear this really clear. So again, Dr. Woodward made a good point, is we've got to start with leadership first. Like when you're changing a system, you got to deal with power structures first. Who's going to set the vision, the expectation, and really understand this work. But then when you think about your teachers who are part of the system and most critical person in the system who works with kids, absolutely they need the same support to be able to learn, to be able to explore, to be able to make mistakes, and also to be in this place of lots of support first. And then we talk about accountability, right? Because that's another thing with this type of work, when you start to deal with issues of equity, it becomes very, very, very tough. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to go so fast that we end up having to pause this work. So we have to set the tone first, and I'm really big on safe space. So with teachers, the way we engage with teachers is in year 2, you may notice it says site leadership team coaching. Okay, so principal site leadership. And what site leadership means is that every principal, to honor the work and know that there may be some equity focused work that actually has already happened. So I want to be very clear that no one's starting from scratch. What we're doing is looking at, let's take this to a deeper level, systemic approach. Site leadership teams include teachers. It includes teachers who are part of this work in terms of decision making, right? They've been empowered to collaborate with their principals and leadership teams. So it's important to recognize teachers have a role in this, but it's very focused on leadership first. Because if the vision is not held with leadership, it's very difficult to shift the system, because the power dynamics don't lie with teachers solely. They don't lie with students solely. They don't lie with parents solely. But parents, student, teachers, everyone is part of this process, which is where you see the collection of voices, and you start to see the incorporation of the equity walk process. But that is why. And so I hope that gives some clarity on the role of teachers. It's very important that they have an opportunity to engage. And if that's something you want to explore, our team is open to that, but we purposely do not engage with teachers first. And that's just from our experience of understanding we are not going to be able to change this type of trajectory with working within the system, kind of moving from the middle. But teachers have to be a part of those equity teams, which we actually help principals develop, so that they can lead and build capacity when consultants kind of step away. This is the ultimate goal. And again, you got to do it in a safe way. We call it go slow to go fast. Very, very important.
Nicole, thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to reiterate, my message was not to go with the teachers first. That clarity that you were saying about incorporating the teachers with the process. In reading the proposal, I wasn't quite clear how involved the teachers were going to be in with the process, so you answered my questions. Thank you.
Good feedback. Thank you for the feedback, too. I'll keep that
Trustee
in mind.
Maher?
Yes, just questions for Dr. Woodward. Dr. Woodward, while I support all this, certainly, because I've seen year after year the lack of growth, besides doing this step, is there any thought about putting the same amount of money into, let's say, tutoring clubs, homework clubs, anything like that? Because I'm concerned that the students that we have now, do they have to wait 3 years before they start seeing a change, and they're having difficulties now?
So thank you for that, Mr. Maher. What I can say is that every year we have LCAP funds that can be set aside to do much of what you're saying right now. As you know, it has been difficult to obtain tutors sometimes from within our existing staff. And so that is something that our team, the teaching and learning team, student services, have engaged in is, okay, so where else can we be? Mr. Hernandez has assisted with this. How can we find additional staff that can support our students? We have money in LCAP that we can use now. And in addition, we have some grants coming our way that are designed for that specific purpose. And so, yes, there's a real-time need to do something that helps our struggling students at this moment in time, through the summer, into the next school year, looking into some other innovative potential tutoring programs to support our struggling students. Once we get them back on our campuses, it might be easier to have them get excited if there were some additional digital tutoring options, but right now that's not really appealing to them. So I guess the short answer is yes, we can do that now with the money that we have now.
So this contract is being paid for out of LCAP dollars, is that correct?
That is correct.
So it's not part of what we're spending for our 15% of our CSAs, okay? All right. So I'm supportive of this. I know it's a lot of money, but we have been trying for years to do this. Oh, Who's waving at me now? All right, sorry, folks. We are sitting in a really weird angle here. And anyway, I'm supportive of the work, but largely because it's necessary. But also, we have tried to do this on our own for a number of years. And I've had the privilege to participate in some of that work. And you know, it is difficult to do this on your own, to recognize the implicit bias, to understand. You know, it helps to have people of different perspectives who can look at a situation from and tell you that your experience is not everyone's experience, and that's very helpful. And we've moved along that way quite a bit over the last 10 years for sure. So I have seen Nicole's work before at Alameda County Office of Education. You know, I can understand that there might be some concerns in particular about the dollars. I know in our Pleasanton community, not all of our residents are prepared for us to do this work, and part of the reason that we need to work with the leadership to, including ourselves, to really deeply understand the work and be able to explain the why and the how of what we're doing to our community members to help them understand the importance themselves in our community so that we can make permanent change. Otherwise, we're like, you know, we'll just, it'll fall away as people change in leadership roles if we don't build that capacity and build that learning and build that understanding within, you know, bake it in our bones in our district and then also in our community. So that being said, I will.
Well, here's just one quick comment. Sorry. My last comment on that is, so getting back to my first point is, I do think especially the end of year 2, we need to build in time for deep, honest reflection. Is this making a difference? Because I think if we just go along with the program and wait until the end of year 3 and then have this, you know, that's going to be too late. So that's my only request.
Ask one more question. So
Sure.
I'm just wondering, Nicole, about your success rate, because this is a 3-year program. Do you often say you need another 3 years? I mean,
No, you know, the goal of consultants, and we say this often, is to work our way out of jobs, right? Our job is not to do the work of those that are employees. Our goal is to build capacity. The reason for a 3-year scope of work is because we're talking about systems change. We're not talking about just kind of, you know, one and done workshop. We've all been through those trainings. We've all been through equity and diversity trainings. I have some amazing friends and colleagues. I've gone through their trainings. But the number one problem with that is you can't change adult mindset or give them another awareness, right, to give them a chance to change if you don't put that time in. Our brains just don't work like that. So the reason for the 3-year scope is that you need extensive time to have repetition, also coaching, okay, ongoing support. And then the 3 years is really kind of what districts typically kind of start off with when you do comprehensive work. This work typically shows up in a 10-year span. So when you talk about like systemic change, 10 years is where you start to see kind of the Titanic start to shift, and you start to see culture shifts. You start to see like, this is how we do it. It takes time, but typically districts don't stay in it that long. And so what we don't want to do is equity work be that thing that comes and goes and we get initiative fatigue and this too shall pass. We do it over and over, and equity work cannot be managed in that way. This is not a curriculum adoption, you know, and every couple of years we get a new, it's very different because you're dealing with mindset change. So to speak to the question about evaluating the effectiveness and the success, is there's ongoing metrics that you actually should be using ongoingly. So as a board, right, as a board, if you approve any contract, whether it's this one or any, I always tell boards that you have to ask those questions of the staff. What is the impact of this work? Right. And it can't just be like, oh, it's great and we love Nicole, right? Like that's a testimonial for a lot of people. I stay very busy because of that. But that's not the impact of the work. It's about looking at the closure of those equity gaps. And you have to have specific metrics, which is what we coach you all on, qualitative and quantitative data that shows changes in that gap. But that takes time. So what we do is we measure mindset. We measure practice change. And I always suggest staff do like a quarterly report to the board to say, how is this work going? What is the impact? And if you're not satisfied, you absolutely always have the right to cancel contracts. But I do want to say that you definitely want to look at a comprehensive approach to the work, and then you evaluate often. You should be asking lots of questions. And I often go to board meetings to provide that context and work with boards as well in the study session process to help have more context about what's happening with the work, because it's a lot of different moving parts. So we can evaluate what's going on with the principals, but then we'd have to evaluate what's going on with our executive cabinet, what's happening with the board, right? There's all these moving parts that really have to have some movement forward. So it's very complex, but you have to be intentional about measuring the impact. So I hope that helps a little bit.
It does. Nicole, we have a public comment, so we're going to move to that right now.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you, Trustee Larson. Our one public commenter tonight is Sean Coleman. So, Sean, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking me today. My name is Sean Coleman. I'm a resident of Pleasanton. I wanted to speak up at today's board meeting because parents have reached out to me regarding their children and PUSD. I also want you to know that I've conducted research and written on gender issues for over 10 years and worked with some of the leading thought leaders in the country pertaining to boys and men and girls and women. I head up a nonprofit that supports boys and men through research and advocacy, and have taught in the public and private sectors. A number of years ago, I provided research to PUSD regarding suspension data after reviewing data provided to me by PUSD. The data showed that boys accounted for 80 to 90% of school suspensions, and that 1st to 4th grade boys were more likely to be suspended than 9th to 12th grade young women. I thought today was the best time to address the board because of its decision to discuss a multi-year equity program. I'm concerned that equity programs will miss the opportunity to address equality problems. All boys of all races do worse than their female counterparts of the same race in meeting UC CSU requirements, biliteracy seals, and Golden State SEAL merit diplomas in PUSD. When Superintendent Haglund spoke of implicit bias, larger systems, and the ongoing causes of inequities in his March 17 letter, I know his concerns were focused on other areas, but it gave me pause and an opportunity to ask if any equity programs are being constructed to address the fact that the challenges boys face in PUSD are symbolic of a larger systemic problem in California schools. Much like PUSD, all boys of all races in the state of California do worse than their female counterparts of the same race in meeting important educational goals that lead to higher educational outcomes. If PUSD believes equity must be measured by access and outcomes, it must address the single largest issue we face locally, statewide, and nationally, according to the data from the California Department of Education, the Office of Civil Rights, and National Center for Educational Statistics. Boy data that addresses all our sons is often overlooked by programs. Boys are doing worse than girls in educational attainment. Since 2003, women have outnumbered men in undergraduate fall enrollment in degree-granting post-secondary institutions
Mr.
by
Coleman.
2 million or more each year.
Mr. Coleman,
And as
can
an
you
uncle of
wrap up
7
your...
nieces,
wait,
I
can you-
care, literally 22 seconds. And as an uncle of 7 nieces, I care as deeply about their success as I do my nephews and sons, and would argue as equally for them if the converse were true. I know this is a lot to take in, and I will follow up with PUSD board.
Thank you
with
very
data
much
and
for
the
your
hope of
time. I
presenting
appreciate
this
your
data and
comments.
solutions at a future board meeting before PUSD considers equity programs that may unknowingly marginalize a population.
Mr. Gannon? Thank you. I'm sorry, Sean, we have a 2-minute limit. Nice to see.
No further comments.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions by the trustees?
President Larson, I just wanted to confirm with the investment proposal, it's just a proposal, so there's flexibility to adjust with the district, working with the consultant if there's a mutual decision that, oh, maybe one less equity walk, and maybe want to use that an extra day to support with more teacher support, or is there some fluidness with the proposal in the days?
Yes.
Okay. I think that was my biggest question, because I think I'm still struggling with how are we going to get to the level of all the classroom teachers. I don't see it laid out here in the proposal. So is it Is it more of a turnkey model that we're supporting, we're going to have teacher coaches being trained and then there's going to be a turnkey back? Or are we envisioning that district staff from the teaching and learning department will be doing some more specific training with the teachers at the teacher level? I just need a little more clarity on that.
So I would suggest that the answer to the question is fairly simple in that this is an ongoing program that will be managed by the Teaching and Learning Division. The consultant is being brought in to support that work, to lead the development of the mindset work, but there's going to be years of work that's going to continue beyond the contract. So I wouldn't want you to think that the only things that we're going to be doing with regards to this work are things that are outlined in the contract.
Perfect. That clarifies. Thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval of 12.3.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Is there any further discussion? All right. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Trustee McCashy?
Aye.
Maher? Aye. Miller?
Aye.
And aye. Thank you very much for the presentation and look forward to the work. With that, we'll move, before I move on to the final item, which I realize is short, it is 10 to 10. We need to extend the meeting maybe a little bit. Is there a motion to extend past 10 o'clock?
So recall that you're going back into closed session.
Correct, but so that's true. We have closed session as well.
I'll make a motion.
To extend to 11, what time would you like? 11 o'clock?
Do I have to put a time?
Yes, you do.
Okay. All right. Fine. It won't go to 11, but yes.
Okay. All right, it's been moved to extend the meeting to 11 o'clock. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher? Aye. Miller?
Aye.
And Larson, aye. All right, sorry about that, thank you. 12.4, this is the possible action to award the video surveillance and access control project at our two high schools to AMS.net. Am I throwing it over to John?
Yes, to make it short, we'll throw it over to John.
I'll make it short. Good evening, board members, superintendent, and community. Tonight, I'm bringing forward the first of the video cameras and the surveillance access card projects, and this is going to be at the high schools. Just to give you a little background on this, Measure I-1 included funding for district-wide initiative of the safety of all 15 campuses. And then that initiative upgrades the existing security infrastructure and deployment of security cameras on all campuses. In November of last year, the safety and security standards were using the a Vigilon platform were adopted by the board. It's important to get security standards in place and adopted by the board because then we can have a standard throughout the district. And so after that occurred, the campuses were examined by the district bond team, including Van Pelt Construction Services, and also input was received from each campus and from the operations department. Then we went into Foothill and Amador. They were soon to be figured out to be the highest priority because they had the greatest need. They had the greatest security issues. And so those were put on top. Then we had to come up with a project delivery method of how do we bid these projects out? And since they're so complex, we needed to have a good collaboration where there's a lot of flexibility involved. And so a design build contractor is something that would be very desirable. Well, and there is that opportunity to do that through the California Multiple Awards Schedule, which is the CMAS contracts. So we followed that process, and we believe it's the best way to serve the district's needs. Early in January of this year, our district partners and security design consultants, who we hired also, which was Guidepost Solutions, they created a set of documents for both the schools, for Foothill and for Amador. And that's a bridging set of documents. So basically they're conceptual designs of what they should have, what features they should have. Then you bid the project out, which we did, and we got 4 firms that submitted, and the proposals were graded, and then 3 firms scored high enough to move on to interviews. Interviews were done, and AMS.net was the best that we could find. They were scored the highest. Subsequent to all of that, then AMS was brought into negotiations with the district, and we wanted to know very clearly that they understood the scope of work, and also we wanted to negotiate the best price. So after all of that, we come up with the price. The price is $1.1 million and change, and that includes a 10% contingency for unforeseen construction conditions. So during school hours, this is not a project that'll be disrupting school classes. This is outdoor types of things. If there is any work that's going to be done inside the classrooms or inside of any of the staff spaces, it'll be done after hours. AMS.net is also a company that is doing the majority, if not all of our data and technology needs throughout the district, and they're very aware of how the district functions. So it's very important. So tonight we're recommending the action of the Board of Trustees to award the contract to AMS.net, and I'll answer any questions that you have.
Questions? Trustee Maher?
Yeah, John, was the bid that came in under the projected budget?
Yes, it was.
How much?
I don't have that exactly, but I know that it's under budget. I can get you that information. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
The write-up says that the project budget has ample room to cover this expenditure. Are there other questions? Trustee Carrion.
So how does this work? Do they contact the police if something happens, or does it just videotape?
There's a system of phone numbers that it goes through. First, it goes through the district personnel, the contact person, which is usually the maintenance side. And then if there's no responses in that method, then it'll go to an outside line, which generally is the police department.
So my concern was about the accessibility and tamper-proof of the cameras and the systems, and I know I appreciate the answer in the Q&A, but if you could go over that a little bit for the public, that would be great. Since we've had some vandalism at our other school sites.
Right. By the nature of a security system, with the more cameras on campus, there will be a lot more visual connection to seeing what something is going on. The cameras will also be placed high up and as best we can out of vandalism areas. Now, that's not to say that they for sure won't be vandalized, but we'll do everything we can to keep them up high and out of the way, and also a lot of coverage throughout the campus.
Great. Anyone else? All right, we have a proposal to award the contract to AMS.net in the amount of $1,131,071.82 out of Measure I-1 bond funds, which were allocated for this purpose.
If I can add, I got the answer to the under budget. It's $425,000 under budget.
There you go.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve 12.4.
I'll second it.
Oh, I had a really quick question though. Does this include the key card entries too as well instead of the keys?
Yes, it'll be at limited
Controllers?
locations, primarily the high use areas.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, sorry.
Any other discussion?
Second.
There was one. Thank you, Mr. Maher. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Larson, aye. All right, thank you very much. Are there board reports and requests this evening? Do any board members have any reports from meetings? Trustee Maher?
I don't have a readout or but I'd like to know that our next board meeting is on the 22nd of April. Is that correct? Okay. The reason I'm asking is if we're moving forward with looking at data about what's going on with our cohorts, with our negotiations and so forth, is that too long of a time to wait before we make some decisions or plans how we move forward with, collapsing the cohorts, adding, whatever it might be? Do we have the data? I would like to see data of how many students are in each class. If I have one in one first period and one in the first period on Thursday, Friday, then that's only 2 kids. But I don't have that data at all.
So, Trustee Maher, we always have the ability to call a special meeting to deal with that issue. So that's our next scheduled regular board meeting.
Okay. Who would make that decision, Dave? That would be you?
Joan, the board president, would call the meeting, and I would consult with her in that process.
Okay. Will we have any information before then, Dr. Woodward? Or?
Mr. Maher, we're looking at all of that right now, so I think yes.
Okay.
I know yes.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee McCashy?
Just an announcement. I'm a member of the Youth Commission, and there is an opening for high school in the city. So if we could send some communication to the principals, just of interest for any high schooler that might want to apply to serve on that Youth Commission with the city. That deadline is April 7th, so I'll send the information. And I also spoke with a individual supporting gun awareness for locking up gun safety. This will be brought eventually to the city as a possible ordinance, and so at some point, not right away, but would love to put that on a discussion point with the board to support that ordinance at that point in time. So those are my only comments. And for our next regular board meeting, if we could have an update on the progress reports for our students for the spring and their performance for their academics with the D's and F's that we've been talking about. I assume it'll be, we'll get an update at some point, but would love to hear about that since trimester or quarter 3 has wrapped up.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about it before. I would like to have an update. If we want to send it in the weekly thing, that's okay. But, we have the learning loss plan to develop that the board has to approve by June 1st. So would like to, see the who's on the task force, see what progress has been made. So would like an update on the work that's going into looking at how we're going to spend those dollars to support our students. So that would be great. All right then, yes, our next regularly scheduled meeting is the 22nd of April due to spring break. We are returning to closed session right now, but there will not be anything to report out. So from the public's perspective, thank you and have a good night.